Good evening, everybody. As it is 7 o'clock, I would like to call the meeting to order. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I'll ask for an approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
I would like to add an item to the agenda, please.
Thank you. What would that be?
And our committee secretary has that, if she could perhaps put that up on the overhead.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's to add a third item to closed session, which is receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose, and it's with respect to Highland Gate development application.
Thank you.
I have a second?
Yes.
Councilor Humphries is seconding that. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. It carries. Then approval of the agenda with the additional item proposed by the mayor. Councilor Tom, Councilor Humphries, all those in favor? Thank you. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. I'll start on my right with Councilor Maracas. Councilor Maracas, is there anything for you tonight?
Nothing right now, but I might pull something after.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Item 8, please, Madam Chair.
Item number 8?
8, yes.
Thank you. Councilor Thompson?
Item number 4, please, and 5. That's it for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Abel? Thank you. Councilor Humphries? 2 and 3? Thank you. Councilor Tom?
Item number 7, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Kim, is there anything for you?
Yes, item 6, please.
Thank you. And Councilor Curry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. They've all been pulled.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to add? Councilor Thompson?
Thank you. May I ask that item 13 and 16 be pulled as well, please?
You may. Okay. Then, Councilor Humphries, do you have something to add? Actually, maybe I should go over it.
Yes.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 13, and 16. Mr. Sorry. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 13, and 16. Have I missed anything? Thank you. A motion to adopt the items not requiring separate discussion. Thank you, Councilor Peary, Councilor Kim. All those in favor? Great. We have one delegation tonight. Mr. Terry, is it Mr. Terry? Kawar resident, about the cedar tree hedges, if you'd like to come to the podium.
Good evening. Thank you for seeing me tonight.
Thank you. Before you begin, I would just like to remind you that you have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
In case you find understand my accent, feel free. I'll be more than glad to repeat myself. Okay. I've sent you a summary. I'm trying to make it up in 5 minutes. Basically, in spring 2009, I decided to plant an evergreen hedge tree around my property at 29 Mendes Forest. After that, I approached the town to understand the process and procedures, how to do it. I came to the reception in this same building right now, and I informed them what I need to do, and they sent me upstairs to the 3rd floor to the apartment. When I went upstairs, they asked me to deal with the forestry department. At that day, I met with the department supervisor. Her name was Sarah. I explained to her about my intentions, showed her a sketch about the plan of planting the hedge. She informed me that the town staff has to physically come and inspect my property, and then they can tell me whether it was okay or not. She then reminded me that if it was okay, I have to keep my plantation hedge 3 feet away from the first of the curb and to keep the height at the corner at 5 feet high max. The next day, she called me and informed me that after inspecting the property, I am good to go. The same day, in the afternoon, I came to thank her personally and asked if there's any paperwork or agreement that I need to sign or to obtain a written permission. At that time, she told me, no, you are beautifying the town, the neighborhood, and trees are good for the environment. Go ahead and proceed. And she reminded me then to obtain utility locates so I don't damage any water or hydro line. I did exactly what she told me to do. I had all the utility locates done, planted my hedge 3 feet away from the curb and at 5 feet high max at the corner. On May 25th, 2011, received a letter from the town informing me that they have received a complaint about the line of sight and I have to trim the hedge at the corner to 3 feet high. I complied immediately with the presence of the bylaw officer on site who showed me the edges from where or the dimensions where I need to cut and how high. I did that exactly the same day. The bylaw officer was happy, but at that time the town has no issues by keeping the trees after trimming them. On December 2nd, 2014, I received a letter from the town stating that my hedge is a hazard to sight line and an obstacle to winter maintenance operation, and requested me to have them removed by December 12, 2014. I replied to that letter that I had permission to plant my trees in that current location. On January 7, 2015, I received a letter stating that regardless of any previous approval, trees has to be removed, and they could stay until April 30th, 2015. So I requested a meeting with the town staff. On January 15th, I met with the town staff who informed me that they could not find the documentation for the approval I got earlier. I reiterated to them that I was told there is no need for a written permission when I first came. City clerk told me that the person who approved my request is not authorized to grant such approval. I did ask how a town resident would know who is authorized or not authorized to make a decision once the resident approached the town offices for direction. The town clerk informed me during that meeting that my hedge facing Orchard Heights is planted on the region easement and Aurora town has no authority over that land. He told me to seek approval directly from the region for the trees facing Orchard Heights. He was only going to discuss the trees that are planted on the town boulevard facing Mendes Forest. He said that I have to apply for an encroachment agreement. He even told me that the council has to come back to staff for their recommendation and the staff will never approve my application, i.e. I am doomed. Whatever I do, the only way to keep the trees is through encroachment agreement and the staff will recommend against it. I have contacted York Region regarding the hedge on their easement facing Orchard Heights. And after their inspection, I was told they have no concerns with my trees and I have no objection to keep them in that current location. I communicated this outcome to the town.
Excuse me, I have 2 more minutes, thank you.
Okay. Well, during the January meeting, the staff advised me that it will cost me $615 for the town fees for the encroachment, and subsequently, a few weeks later, the staff added additional cost. The city clerk informed me they have to pay $615 for the town's fees and charges bylaws, another $570 to $1,100 for the region fees, and I have to get a legal survey for the property, even though I'm not building a structure or something, it's only an evergreen trees. Since I have 2 minutes or 1 minute left, I just read actually the submission that the staff said, and they mentioned that during the snow removal they faced some issues that I requested compensation for my trees. This is totally incorrect. I have here, it is the actual complaint I submitted. There is no mentioning at all about any compensation. Actually, you can see the whole communication back and forth, and even I thank them and they thank me for the good job and they thank me again. And when the trees that damaged, the snow was dumped on the front yard, it was not on the city property. And here's a picture of it, I emailed it to you. Here is the city tree, and you can see how far deep that snow is. So they dumped it on the front lawn, not just on my lawn, and the people across the street of me, and they have no hedge or trees at all. So,
Linda, could you put that on overhead, please? Does anybody on council object if we give the resident a couple extra minutes? Motion, Councilor Humphreys, Councilor Kim, thank you. All those in favor of giving, thank you. We will give you a few extra minutes, so.
okay. I'll continue. Here's a picture actually for the line of sight. Here's a car at the intersection, and you can see when the driver head is way above the tree lines. You can see it. Thank you for giving me the 2 minutes. The third week of January, a colleague of mine approached the town of Aurora inquiring about the procedure to plant trees on the road allowance around the corner house property. He called in and he was transferred to the Parks Department, similar to what happened with me. He spoke with Carol White, extension 3233, who advised him that there is no need for a written permission to install shrubs, trees, bushes on road allowances as long as the landscaping does not block the view of the line of sight requirement. The same thing happened with me 5 years ago. She referred him to the bylaw officer to verify the line of sight. This is the same process I went through 5 years ago, but this time I have it documented in writing, and I have all the emails back and forth. And I passed this information to Mayor Doe, who advised me to pass the information to the city clerk. March 2nd, I did that, or on March 3rd, the town clerk emailed me, said that my documentation does not change the staff position on this matter. Just to confirm, there is no safety issue in keeping the hedge in its location. This was inspected by the town bylaw officer. Also, there is no obstruction of snow removal, as they have been there for the last 5 winters and never blocked any cleaning or maintenance. As you can see, I'm frustrated and puzzled. During this ordeal, I have been getting mixed directions from various sources and have caused so much confusion and unneeded stress. I am humbly asking your gracious permission to honor the town previous approval for my evergreen hedge planted on the town boulevard facing Mendes Forest. I would really appreciate that. And for some of the written documentation of, again, I never requested any compensation. I have the emails and I can give it to the clerk. I'm here. And all the documentation back and forth, what I requested, what was the reply. The loader driver that dumped the snow on the several front yards, my neighbor across the street does not even have cedar trees or any hedges, and he dumped it on his front lawn. During January 15th, the same meeting I had with the staff, Mr. S. Curtis, he's the road supervisor of public work, informed me, and my wife, she was with me then, that the loader operator approached him that the same evening after completing his shift and told him to expect to hear complaints from several residents in the area as he dumped the snow on their front lawn as he ran out of storage area for the snow. The meeting minutes, I have it documented. I can email it back to you. I have a copy of it. The snow was dumped on my front lawn and not on the town property. When I complained because there was dirty snow full of salt. But the town did an excellent job. Actually, the next day they came, apologized, and removed that snow.
Thank you, and you need to wrap up.
Thank you. And again, there is no line of issue. Even up till now, you can feel free. Anybody who has some picture of the line of sight. And there is no obstruction for any line maintenance.
Thank you for coming forward.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Just if you want to just stay there for a moment.
Stay, yeah.
Are there any questions for the delegate, Council?
Motion to receive.
Motion to receive, Councilor Humphreys, Councilor Perry. Thank you. Questions, Councilor Humphreys?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for coming this evening to clarify. I appreciate it and understand your frustration, especially that they've been around for 5 years. And I also appreciate, I live in the area. I go by your house every day, and I don't see any issues from my perspective. I know we have encroachment rules, but this is 5 years old now, so my perspective is, we'll do that when we talk about the item. But just to clarify, was it 5 years ago that you went to?
5 years, almost 5 years ago, yes, 5-6 years ago. Yes.
Where you had approval
To plan, and I stick exactly what they told me, 3 feet away from the curb edge, and at that time 5 feet at the corner, then 2 years down they should make it 3 feet, and they're still at 3 feet right now at the corner.
And thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question, do you keep them at that height standard?
Yes.
Request?
Yes,
all
like sometimes
summer?
they go a couple of inches, but every year I cut them down, and after this I'm going to cut them 3 times a year right now, just to make sure they're going to stay at 3 feet high.
Appreciate that. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Are there any other questions? Thank you. We need to vote. Oh, you have another question?
Yeah, to you, Madam Chair, I know we'll have to vote to receive. When we get into the agenda, I'd like to move this item forward so that they don't have to... Is it?
For item 2, agree, thank you. But thanks for the respect to the resident. Okay, Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, through you to the Speaker. Did you, when you had touch with someone in the town, was it over the phone or you?
No, I came in person.
In person.
I came to the same building here. At the reception, I asked, this is what I'm here for. They transferred to the 3rd floor. I wanted they transferred to the forestry department, Parks and Forestry.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chair, to whoever might best answer the question. Do we have a record of those who signed in to ask?
We could ask that question when we bring the item forward. Thanks, Councillor Kim. Okay, all those in favor of receiving and referring the information from the delegate to the agenda item? Thank you, that carries. You may sit down.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Are there any presentations from the advisory committees tonight? Okay, consideration of items then. No, wait a second. Item number 1 wasn't pulled, so item 2 is on the table.
Yeah, by Councillor Humphreys.
Councillor Humphreys, you pulled this.
Hi, thank you. For you, Madam Chair, I cannot move the motion as is.
Thank you. Is there, Mayor Dahl will move second. Thank you, Councillor Maracus. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I reviewed the report in front of us, and I absolutely understand encroachment, but it's obvious from the resident's explanation that he did all he could do at the time of implementing his hedges. I also note that, we contacted the resident in 2011 stating our concerns. He abided. And then in 2014, when the resident contacted us about the snow issue, is when we decided to identify the encroachment and make an issue of it. It is not because anyone called or cited any issues of safety. So I'm concerned that, we turned an issue where we're providing service level and absolutely thank the resident for letting us know that we removed the snow the day after and cleared it and made that issue resolved. And also, looks like neighbors in the area have the same issue without cedar hedges, and I don't know if those were cleared or not, but it looked like we decided to make it an issue here. And maybe it is an issue, because I do know on page 6 that what we need to do is develop a bylaw or an approved policy, and the need for council-approved policy to manage encroachments. That we absolutely have an issue. It's all over town. We heard it everywhere. The golf course issue. We have lots of encroachment there. So how do we manage something like this is another issue, and I think it's absolutely important for staff to move forward and bring such a policy forward. At this point, I don't think I want to make this an example of how we deal with encroachments. I don't think it's appropriate. I drive in the area all the time, have no issues with it. There's no safety issues as far as I'm concerned. And I think I'd like to go with item number 1. Alternative recommendation was council may authorize the town to enter an encroachment agreement with the homeowner at 29 Forest to the satisfaction of the town solicitor and the director of IES, which I would assume is ensuring that they stay at the appropriate height. We do a little check. There is a drive-through that bylaw has to do, obviously. I don't think it's going to take a lot of time. You just drive by and it's at the right height, move forward. If there's a problem, we follow up with the resident with a letter and make sure they comply. So for me, I'm absolutely against what the recommendation is, and would like to offer item 1. I think others may want to speak before I do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have to vote yes. Councillor, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, did you want to?
I appreciate the residents' concern, but I'm supporting the staff recommendation that we do not enter into an encroachment agreement. We've got another one on tonight, which will actually be delegated to next Tuesday by the owner of that property, just strangely enough also on Orchard Heights. We dealt with one last summer or just previous to last summer. There was also an issue of trees on town property, and I feel it's, quite frankly, it's incumbent on the town to protect its property rights. And I appreciate the point that you made about Highland Gate, but those are private property encroachments, not public property encroachments. So I feel that we have an obligation. And through you, Madam Chair, if I may, to the clerk, was there compensation offered with respect to this particular issue?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, certainly as a goodwill gesture, my office had offered the requesting party $1,000 to assist him in moving those cedar hedges to his own property line.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be clear. The town notified in December, in 2011, but then more recently, in December 2nd, the delegate said that on December 2nd, 2014, he was notified by the town the trees were a hazard. And I think Councillor Humphrey said that we didn't notify him until we moved the snow from the catch basin. But in the report, it says in March, the town was clearing the catch basin. So I just want to be clear that we had notified the resident before we were clearing the catch basin. So I want to understand that it's not a cause and effect. So I don't know who to ask that for clarification.
Who would like that one? Mr. Hart? We're fighting over now. Mr. Simonovskis, would you like to weigh in, and then Mr. Moore?
Certainly through Madam Chair. So just to understand the question, is the request because of the snow, or is it something else driving the request? Is that sort of...
I just wanted to clarify what Councillor Humphrey said, that, and I may have got it wrong. She said that everything was fine until they were clearing the catch basins, and then when he said, hey, you've dumped snow on my property, that's when we came and said, okay, you know what, now you've got to move your... Is that what you were saying, Councillor Humphreys? But the way I read the report, it was in March, but we had notified him in December.
December 14.
So I don't think that statement is true, or it's not correct.
Yes. Mr. Hart, through you?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and perhaps not to enter into debate, but I could clarify this. I believe there's some confusion about there have been several issues related to these hedges over the length of time, and there had been a previous, if my memory serves me right, 2012, there had been a concern, or it might have been a little later than that, before a concern expressed about the 2011 about the sight lines and the height. So there was one of the issues that had been addressed, and then there was a second, the second issue, the 2014, where there was both the sight lines and the snow removal issue.
Thank you.
So I didn't get my question answered, Madam Chair, but I think I'm correct in assuming that we notified him in December and the catch basin issue was 4 months later. So what I wanted to make sure, the inference that we didn't say anything to the gentleman until he complained is not, in fact, correct.
And
So,
maybe we need to have a clarification on that from staff either this week or next week.
All right. I don't like the cause and effect sort of scenario. However, I do have some questions about this. I'm looking at the pictures, and I'm getting the impression that at Mendy's Forest, where the sidewalk is, to me, that doesn't look like 3 feet. And I'm looking at the page 11 picture, where it shows mostly Mendy's Forest. It actually is the same without the car. Yes. So that distance there on the Mendy's Forest, how far away from the curb is that? Madam Chair.
To Mr. Simonovskis.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm assuming you're looking at item 2, page 8, that attachment number 1?
No, I'm looking at page 11.
Page 11. Through you, Madam Chair, it's similar to what's on page 8 as well, so I mean, we're saying it's definitely not more than 3 feet, but it's clearly within the town's boulevard.
Actually, Madam Chair, while I've got that picture, attachment 1, page 8, we're actually looking at 2 properties there. Is that correct, through you, Madam Chair?
Mr. Simonovskis?
That's correct. The property on the left is the one that's in question, or the hedge on the left of that photo.
I see 2 hedges there. I see a tree and a hedge that looks like it's at least 8 feet off the curb. And then as I look down the road, I see another hedge that's very, very close.
Correct.
So would I don't want to make this, but the way it seems to me, the closest one to us with the tree on it meets the standard that we ask where a hedge be placed. And the one that's further down is the one that's too close to the curb. Is that correct, Madam Chair?
Mr. Marr?
through you, Madam Chair, on page 8, where you're seeing a picture there is the hedge closest to, I guess, the picture, that's actually in compliance, that's on the line. It's the hedge further away, you see how it juts out, comes closer to the roadway on Mendy's Forest, and then continues down to the intersection. That is the homeowner's property. On item 2, page 13, you can see a better aerial shot of that. So 27 Mendy's Forest has the compliant hedge, and then it juts out at the beginning of the property line between 27 and 29 Mendy's Forest. And then you see where the hedge comes onto town property, adjacent to the curbway, and then continues along Mendy's Forest.
It would almost be advantageous if we could put that on the overhead, so I'm absolutely clear, and I hope the council members are clear. If you don't mind.
Thank you, I agree.
Oh, that picture. Go ahead, Mr. Mark, thank you.
This is the proper hedge. This is...
So you'll see right here, there's an existing hedge. Microphone, please.
There's an existing hedge at 27 Mendy's Forest, which runs about here and meets the property line. 29 Mendy's Forest, and the hedge comes out towards the property line, the curb, and then runs down. That's what you're seeing in the first picture. So we have a compliant hedge line here on the property line, and we have a non-compliant hedge line here that's coming onto a municipal right-of-way.
And Mr. Meyer, if you don't mind, that's an outdated picture. Do I not see the hedge going all the way to the corner to the red line now in the photos?
That's correct, it does. So you'll see that the hedge, as you have there, now runs the entire distance. So you'll see it coming down here, and it's been trimmed back, but according to operations staff, even if you are sitting in your vehicle, there is still a sight line obstruction to traffic coming along Orchard Heights coming westbound, I believe. And so it's hard to tell from the picture, and I don't want to say what the distance is exactly, but it doesn't appear to be 3 feet or more away from the sidewalk, and certainly it's onto the town property.
Thank Mr. Mayor. So obviously my comment is how could we allow this, to me it's encroachment. We can see plainly the one property to the north is compliant, and that's where I imagine a hedge would be. And this one is relatively close in on a corner. Certainly a toddler going along wouldn't be seen. An adult would be. And I'm just wondering, after 5 years, how we didn't address this. It seems to me it should have been dealt with right off the bat, but unless it's complaint-driven, but I see a gap there, so I'll wait for other comments, but in my mind, clearly at the corner, that hedge is, to me, I mean, it's obvious that it's encroaching on the town boulevard, and I can plainly see where the other person has been compliant.
Mr. Marr.
Through you, Madam Chair. It was noted in 2011 in a letter to the resident that there was a sightline issue, and he was asked to either trim the trees to a certain height or to alternatively remove the trees and relocate it onto the owner's property. I believe it didn't become a real issue until we've had a severe winter the last 2 winters, and so operations staff had a difficulty in finding places along Mendy's Forest to place snow when they're clearing the sidewalk, when they're clearing the roadway, and also when they're clearing the sidewalks. And so when they're trying to clean the catch basins, as what happened in March of last year, they need to place the snow somewhere, and that's what the boulevards are for. They had to still place it on the boulevard, but it looks as if it's onto the homeowner's property. It's still within the municipal right-of-way, just as on the opposite side of the hedge. And so in order to maintain service levels and service standards, we have to place the snow somewhere. That's what the boulevards are for.
If I may, Madam Chair.
You may.
If we had an issue where we had service utilities that we normally bury on the right-of-ways, in that case, we would have to take this person's hedge out if we were to access it. Is that, through you, Madam Chair, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. And when the homeowner approached the region said they were fine with the hedges being there because there is a regional water main that runs along Orchard Heights for which the region requires access. The understanding that they can leave it there, the roots are not deep enough to penetrate into the regional water main, but if they ever need to service it, the region would not hesitate to remove those hedges.
And that's why we have a right-of-way. I mean, okay. So in this case, we have a bylaw that says you cannot put hedges there, but for some reason or whatever, for 5 years this has existed.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. While I'm understanding of the concerns expressed by the resident, I think for me the telling point really comes in the report where on page 5 it talks about setting a negative precedent. Staff clearly indicate that it's not necessarily about the trees itself, but that they believe that the encroachment is impacting both town operations and public safety, and an encroachment agreement will not address those concerns of safety and impacting town operations. And so, to me, I'm in support of the recommendation as it stands. Really, I mean, we have to look at the best interests of the town as a whole, and when we talk about public safety and impacting the town's operation, I wish there was a better solution. There's a simpler way to try and preserve the hedge, but in this case, I think that I'll be supporting the recommendation as it stands because of the operational and safety issues expressed in the report.
Thank you. Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For me, one of the two pictures that I think are the most important when looking at this from a safety point of view are on page 10 of the item and page 11 of the item. In page 10, you can clearly see when you're standing outside from the sidewalk that there is a car just west of the tree. When you take that view, that same view from where the car and where the driver would be, you can't see that car anymore. There's definitely, in my view, a sightline issue. There are two separate issues when you're looking at this item as a whole. Our work with the resident over the last 5 years and a safety issue. I sympathize with the resident that maybe we could have had better communications with him and his family and worked better with him. But that doesn't negate the fact that there is a safety issue here, that staff are identifying a safety issue, and to me, that's paramount. You know, when you look at liability for a municipality, staff have come before us, they've identified a safety issue. I can't, in good conscience, regardless of what the situation was and is over the last 5 years, I cannot, in good conscience, look at this situation and say, we can keep the tree up. If it's a safety issue, it's a safety issue. And ultimately, you know, it's been identified, staff have let us know that there's a concern. And so for me, as much as I sympathize with the resident, I understand the resident's concerns, I still think we have to do what's best for the municipality on the whole, and if ever there was an accident in this location because somebody couldn't see, I would feel personally responsible for that, and you know, in my view, that's not something I can support.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Mr. Marr, so are we the stewards of the right-of-ways?
Through Madam Chair, yes, where we have jurisdiction.
Well done.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair, that overhead picture that we were looking at on page 13, I'm just curious, who maintains and who cuts that grass that's on the second property that where they actually are not encroaching? So I'm wondering who cuts that grass that is on our right-of-way?
The resident, sure.
Through Madam Chair, as the Director has mentioned, it is the resident who clears.
Mr. Downey?
Through Madam Chair, the resident cuts the grass.
Okay, thank you. You know, just a few comments. I guess for me, I look at it, yes, there is an encroachment, definitely. But the way I look at it is the resident came to the town, asked for permission, was given permission, planted the trees, and now we're going to turn around and say, you have to remove them. I don't think that's right. So I'm not in support of what's in front of us, you know, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. I'm sorry, Councillor Kim's first.
No, it's okay.
Okay, you pressed the button, you can go first, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilor Kim, as well. I had a couple of questions. So, on page 5 of the report, and I think it's also in the next one as well, talks about setting a negative precedent, and that there are approximately 15,000 properties in the town, and it's estimated that by town staff, it's a quarter of those properties may have some sort of encroachment. So that represents around 3,700 homes. I guess where I have a problem with this whole process that we're talking about right now, and obviously the next item as well, is that we seem to have, you know, and I know that the report speaks to setting a policy, a council-approved policy to manage encroachments. And I understand the arguments for the removal of the hedges. I understand the concerns of Councilor Marcus and Councilor Humphreys, and of course the resident that for, you know, keeping the hedges because of what has transpired over the last 5 years. I guess what I'm trying to say is we're going to be potentially denying this one and the next one, but are we going to go through 3,700 of these things at council? I think that's a huge waste of time, but let's say that we do set up a policy. You know, my concern is that, you know, we could set up a policy that might deal with these situations differently than the way we might deal with them tonight. And so all I'm saying is that, you know, if it was up to me, I would say if we're going to look at the policy, then I would say perhaps any pending encroachment agreements could be deferred until after that policy is set. But that would just be what my preference would be, because then at least the set of ground rules will be the same for every single person as they go forward. It won't just be at the whim of council to decide on 3,750 encroachment agreements, whether they're, you know, safety concern, not safety concern, whether the town staff talked to the residents, whether they didn't talk to the residents. I mean, that's just getting into, you know, a level of detail that's just slightly ridiculous. So those are my comments. With respect to whether or not I agree with the recommendations in the report or not,
I guess that's what makes this decision difficult, is that, we don't have a set of guidelines to work from, so it's essentially, whether we take the advice of town staff, which is valid, or do we take the pleas of the resident who said that he's talked with the town. So anyways, I'll leave my comments at that and see what other people have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a difficult situation. I think in response to Councillor Tom's comment about, or someone else had mentioned that there's 3,700 households, or a quarter of the homes in Aurora have some level of encroachment. How do we deal with that? And then I would spin that around and say that 3/4 of households are in compliance. Do I want to deal with those who aren't compliant, the wrath of those who aren't in compliance, or the issues of the 3,700? And in the end, we're in the customer service business, and the residents are customers, and we would have to comply by our regulations and service the customers by obeying those bylaws that are in place, for safety and sight lines and all those issues. And my only concern here is that in 2009 or 10, Mr. Kawara supposedly came into the town and spoke with someone, and someone gave him permission. And I empathize that he planted with full knowledge of the town authorizing that. Given that we don't have, even if we were to have a record of him visiting, we don't have a record of what was said. And with a lack of record, even if we were to have approved, I think the issue still stands, is that there is a potential liability. There's sightline issues, safety issues, and all these issues, and I think that takes precedent over who said what and who gave authorization. I think the issue is really the compensation, or how much are we going to help Mr. Kawar safely remove the bushes and replant, and who's going to assist them in all that. And I'm on the side of the staff recommendation, but it's just an issue. I would like staff to work with Mr. Kawar to somehow replace those bushes in compliance, and that we don't have any safety or any liability issues going forward. I think that's the issue here, is how are we going to give great customer service to Mr. Kawar going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a couple of things, and so let's just kind of review this. In 2011, he was granted verbal, approval to put in the cedar hedges. In May 2011, after he planted them, there was some residents requesting there's some sightline issues, so the town went out and asked him to cut the hedges at that level. That was in 2011. From there, I have one question for Karen. Has there been any traffic accidents due to the sightline problems that we know of?
Mr. Marr?
Through you, Madam Chair, not that I'm aware of. We just had the complaints in 2011. We weren't aware of any accidents. We would have to check with your regional police.
Thank you.
So as far as we know, there hasn't been, as far as we know, we may have to check. And then 3 years go by, and we're clearing catch basins to ensure that they're clear, nothing snow, and we realize that the cedar hedges are encroaching on their property, Towns Boulevard. So staff had to make a decision, throw the snow on the property, which is fair. Now, if the resident never contacted us to complain about that, we would never, as far as I can see from this report, let that resident know that his hedges were a problem. But because of that complaint, town went out and investigated, cleared it up, but realized, do you know what, this wouldn't be an issue if we push the hedges back. We're talking about safety here, and I absolutely would never want to put any of our residents in any kind of safety problems. But I drive that all the time, and you stop at the line, and you edge forward like you do on any corner, and you proceed cautiously. I do not see a safety issue there, but there are obviously clearly people are worried, so, get rid of them, cut them down. And it looked like in 2011, our bylaw, we're happy with reducing the sight line, making it clear so that there's a sight line there, and we alleviated that problem. So the only reason we're here is because the resident complained. And now we're going to make an example of this. And, we'll help him. Sure, we'll pay him some money, get rid of his head, just put it all back compliant the way it should have. But that should have happened 5 years ago. I feel that, I'm really disappointed that, if it goes that way, it goes that way. But for me, it's not a safety issue. It's fine. He keeps it under control. We make sure that we have an agreement, perhaps put in the agreement that, all the compliance around keeping the hedges appropriately at the appropriate height. If the region comes and tears them up, that's the owner's problem. We'll find that out in the agreement that we set up. If there's something goes on with the servicing issues, he's aware of it. But for me, I feel that we're making an example of this right now, and I think it's, unfortunately for me, there's lots and lots of these around town. I can name a few, and I won't name them because I feel sorry for those residents, because you don't want some of those here, let me tell you. I think we know them very clearly, and they're beautiful. So for me, I don't think it's an appropriate time to make an issue of this. I think we just make sure we do an encroachment agreement. However, I really support staff being proactive and know that there is an issue. There's things coming up very much lately about encroachments, and the staff have to, they've identified we have a problem. And to Councillor Tom's point, a policy would really help. And then we'd have the same, issue for everyone. Maybe we have grandfathering for some encroachments that are out there, and we slowly but surely keep everyone as regulated as possible. But in this situation, I feel that, unfortunately, we're making an example of this issue that, for me, is not appropriate at this time.
Mayor Dodd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a couple of quick questions for you, if I may. I think the first one is Mr. Marr. Mr. Marr, on page 3 of the item, page 23 on the agenda, right at the bottom it says bylaw number 4734-05.p. I presume that's 2005. So we've had this bylaw in place for about 10 years now. So, Madam Chair, through you?
Yes, Mr. Marr.
Through Madam Chair, that's correct. So we've had the bylaw in place for a while. I think what is lacking here is a process to ensure that we are being as fair as possible. So perhaps, Madam Chair, through you, either to Mr. Marr and or Mr. Simonovskis, what are we doing to actually put something in place so that it doesn't seem like we're as with most of our bylaw issues, enforcement issues, it comes down to a complaint driven, which is not a great way to do it, I realize. So is there something that we're doing to actually proactively manage this and to deal with residents who may be encroaching and coming up with some kind of long-term plan? Because if about 25% are encroaching, and as Councillor Kim mentioned, that means 75% are complying, so we shouldn't penalize those who comply, which is what we're doing by not enforcing compliance across the board, but we have to do that in a manner that's fair and justifiable.
Mr. Simonovskis?
Certainly through you, Madam Chair. I know with these two issues that have been discussed over the last year and a half, we have talked about how do we get here and what do we need to do going forward to either be more consistent with how we look at these issues and more I guess to put it frankly, with regards to encroachment across the town, typically they're either driven by complaint or by staff's observation of encroachment or obstruction. And in a case where it's staff identifying the issue, we will approach the property owners and request some adjustment to the hedges. But I don't think there is a consistent approach, and I think to the Mayor's point, that's something that we need to look at, to be consistent so that everyone understands exactly what the expectations are. So going forward, we definitely have to do something different.
Thank you, Mr. Simonovskis. Last point, Madam Chair, through you to the clerk. If council was to approve the motion which is on the floor right now, would the offer of compensation from the clerk's department still be available to Mr. Kawar?
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, I'd certainly be open to council's direction in that matter. The offer to Mr. Kouar was presented as we'll assist you in moving the hedges to the tune of $1,000, just to, as a sort of a goodwill gesture, or to request an encroachment agreement was presented as an either-or scenario. However, I am, of course, open to council's direction on that matter.
Thank you. Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I'm on both sides. I don't believe any staff gave authorization to plant that hedge a foot away from the curb. If there was a misunderstanding or something. However, whatever happened has been allowed for 5 years. And so I think it's the town's responsibility to make sure that that is enforced. So for example, if there's a car parked overnight, we have 3 to 4 bylaw officers that can go through our whole town and then make that observation. We should have within our staff and the Works Department doing the same thing with hedges. They see a hedge going up a foot from a curb. We're on those roads all the time. We should be looking, our staff should be trained to do so, and not 5 years later when we're clearing a catch basin. So, I do not want to see, especially in 2011 where there was a complaint, and we only asked that the hedge be lowered. I mean, that would have been a great time to have said, hey, we have an issue here. In the interest of compromise, if that corner where that sidewalk meets could be cleared maybe a foot or 2 or 3 feet so that that sight line remains open, and then we'll have to do a bylaw or some sort of policy to see how we're going to effectively monitor and enforce our bylaws. I don't think removal of the whole hedge is what I'm going to be in favor of today. I would like to see something in between, deferral or along those lines, but I would also like to put the matter to rest so that our resident can get on with what he's doing. But I do not want to encourage other residents to go, you know what? I know I'm going to put a hedge right there by the curb. It does contrast with the other property that's just immediately north. He's in complete compliance with his hedge. So it's a matter of one complying and one not, and the town not doing anything about it until it's to a situation like it is now. And I'm in agreement with Councillor Humphreys. So you drive around the town, and when these matters started coming up, I started noticing in a lot of places. I don't want to make an example of this resident. I would like to work in resolving the sightline at that corner, and that would be it in this regard. I would pay careful attention to all the new developments that we have going on east of Bayview to ensure that we catch these things at the very early stage. If someone's planting something, you might say, hey, that's contrary, you're going to have to move that back within the boulevard and make an understanding and educate that way. So those are my comments. I'm not going to favor this exact and have it all removed. I am sympathetic to how we got to this point. And in my mind, it's not the resident is entirely at fault, except he made the mistake at the very beginning where it went. And we could have easily had corrective measures to do so.
So I've lost track. Councillor Perry, Councillor Kim.
Just a couple of quick points. I don't think we're setting an example of anyone. There are safety issues here. There have been safety issues at other parts of town. As Mr. Mayor stated, last year, the year before, we dealt with another one of these issues where, somebody had to take down some of their spruces as well because there was an issue. One point, this is a T intersection. I'm only seeing one stop sign. Could I please get clarification as to whether or not there is still only one stop sign at this T intersection, or if it's still a throughway on Orchard Heights, and there's only one stop on Mendes Forest?
Mr. Sinauskas.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not certain it's anything different. If some of the councillors who drive that area regularly could confirm.
So, again, I sympathize with the resident. I think we have work to do from our end to see how we got to this point, to investigate how we got to this point, and to make sure it doesn't happen again. But that doesn't negate the fact that there's an issue here, and I think we need to address that issue. I would be in favor of this with our other offer to compensate still on the table, because I do think there's some level of shared blame throughout this whole process. So I would actually put that amendment on the table that the clerk's previous offer still be offered to the resident, if that makes sense. Or Mr. Clerk, if you could clear that up or clean that up. May I?
You may.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair, I think the appropriate amendment is here that to add another clause that staff be directed to assist the owner of 29 Mendes Forest in the moving of the cedar hedges in accordance with the original offer of the town clerk. Sounds great.
Thank you. Before I ask for a second on that, I would just like to weigh in. I agree with Councillor Humphreys. I can't see that the resident has done anything wrong in this process.
Madam Chair, it's completely inappropriate for you to be making a comment like this at this point in time as the chair.
Then I give my chair to the mayor and I will speak.
He's made a...
There's no seconder. I have not acknowledged a seconder.
But you have to acknowledge a seconder. If he's moved it, that's for a seconder.
Okay. Is there a seconder for this motion? Mayor Dahl.
So I don't want to speak too much to it. I think it's a step in the right direction. I agree that we should have been out there 5 years ago, stopping it from getting to this point. I think it's, as a goodwill gesture, we need to be working with the resident to try and fix the problem, because I don't want to lay the resident out to dry. I think that's fair. That's why I moved this amendment.
Councillor Marcus, to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the amendment, I'm not in favor of the motion overall, but I think I'll support the amendment just in case the motion passes. So I'd rather see compensation than not. So I'll support the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys.
To you, Madam Chair, to the amendment, my only concern is when we get a whole bunch more encroachment agreements, are we going to be putting a budget in our capital plan or for the rest of the encroachments we're going to be finding? And I can guarantee you there's a lot.
Councillor Kim.
I'm not very good at plants. They all die anyway. Through Madam Chair to Mr. Downey, if we actually dig up the spruce trees, will they actually grow back in a different location, or will they die?
Through Madam Chair, we're talking about cedar hedge and cedar hedge. So yes, you can replant the cedar hedge, provided you take a big enough root ball and dig a deep enough and wide enough trench so that they can reestablish themselves. There shouldn't be any problem.
And through you, Madam Chair, just another question regarding I forgot what kind of trees again, so the trees. If they seem to be maybe 3 to 4 feet wide in diameter, to save all that work, and if the resident is okay with the suggestion, what would happen if we were to cross-cut it by 2 feet so that there'll be room for a snow catch basin as well as improve the sight lines? Will that kill the trees?
Mr. Downey.
Through Madam Chair, I don't know if it'll kill them, it make them look very very bad. No, that wouldn't be something we'd recommend. It wouldn't be horticulturally appropriate. The majority of the cedar is on the exterior, on the face of the plant. Interior to it is nothing but branches. So you would need to replant these or plant new ones, but trimming them severely would not be my recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to, I think, respond to Councillor Humphrey's point that, obviously there's, there may be a lot of encroachment agreements and that might cost a lot of money. This is a specific situation because there's been a lot of back and forth with town and the resident, and the town offered this previously. So I don't think this would be offered with every one of these situations. It's just, this is a unique experience in which the town said, okay, well, to mitigate, some of the frustration, we'll help you move them off. And so we're just reintegrating that offer into the motion. So.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Downey, just to be clear, so the intent would be to try and save these trees by providing some compensation to help move them, and so if all goes well, the trees will just be a foot or two or whatever back from where they are currently now going forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding is that they were planted in 2011, so 4 years ago. I believe they're still in the state where they could be transplanted and there would be a good success of them surviving. So my recommendation would be to dig them up, make sure you take a good healthy root ball, dig a new trench within the property boundary and replant those trees in there. Conversely, you could also put new plants in and reestablish the hedge that way. Either way would be satisfactory, but replanting 4-year-old cedars is not something that is uncommon.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to, I guess, Mr. Downey, would you have a rough figure of how much it would cost to do something like that, an overall job? To move that amount of hedges, dig a trench, move them back, put them down, resod the area? Do you have a rough estimate? I know it'd be difficult, but I'm just thinking a ballpark figure.
Staff.
Through you, Madam Chair, I wouldn't want to give a cost without actually physically being on site and seeing what I had to deal with. There may be other routes I do notice some large spruce trees in the area, and I don't know how close we'd have to come to those or how exactly far we'd have to go back. So I would need to take a look, but you'd be looking definitely in excess of $1,000 for sure if that's where you're going. It would cost more than what the town was offering.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That carries. Back to the main motion. Am I allowed to speak now?
Yes.
I agree with Councillor Humphreys. I can't see that the resident did anything but follow a very logical process. I would like to know if our staff remembers the conversation and has weighed in on this at all. But apart from the fact there are many encroachments all over town, there are so many areas that have a very, very similar situation to this where you have to stop. You don't have a sight line, and whether it's due to proper or improper planting or improper planning, there are many, many areas where you have to do exactly what you have to do here, which is stop. You can't see what's going on. You proceed with caution. I cannot support the staff motion even with the amendment, because I consider the resident blameless, completely blameless in this situation. And I do not see, because of all the situations that exist all over this town, which would also have liability issues, if we want to call this a liability issue, I just cannot support this motion. So I guess everybody's spoken
No, there were some other speakers.
at least twice. Councilor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'm not sure, I guess maybe Mr. Garby or Town Clerk, do we know who this staff member, Sarah, was that Mr. Kawar spoke to? And do we, did he get consent from that person?
I can't answer. If you want to.
Mr. Height.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, as part of my office's investigation of this matter with Mr. Simonovskis, we did identify the staff member. They certainly did not recall the specifics, and it was their opinion that they would never have specifically authorized someone to plant cedar hedges within the town's right-of-way. That was, which is the very reason why my office offered the shared cost to move the cedar hedges, because it was a sort of a, I guess you might call it the he said, she said scenario.
A question for clarification?
I'm fine, go ahead.
If it's a question for clarification, I'll allow that. No, I haven't spoken twice. The resident also mentioned something else when he came to the podium, which I would like staff please to follow up on, which was a much more recent inquiry. There is an email chain there that seems to grant a similar position to a resident, so I would like to please request, Mr. CEO, that you could follow up on that and see what is going on with that, because is there a problem or an unclear situation within the department? Thank you. I think it's time to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Thank you. Thank you to the resident for attending. I'm sure staff will be in touch to clarify exactly what happened here. Item number 3. Is there anyone on staff who would like to speak to the resident as they before they leave the chamber? Mr. CEO, is that in order? Okay.
This is still subject to council approval next week.
Thank you. This is still subject to council approval next week. Thank you. Okay, next item is item number 3. Again, Councillor Humphreys, that is yours. Thank you. Councillor Peary is moving that item. Councillor Tom is seconding it. Councillor Humphreys, would you like to speak to it?
Sure, thank you, and I won't go on further, it's similar to the previous one. Just a question, and my apologies if I haven't read it in here. How long have these hedges been established?
They've left the chamber, Stephen. And Councillor...
Do you, Madam Chair, can I ask?
Thank you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
To you, Madam Chair, we are unsure how long these hedges have been here, but they're quite substantial, very adult hedges, for lack of Mr. Downey probably has a more elegant word than that. But they are very established hedges, so definitely older than the previous owners were hedges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a quick comment. I just live around the corner from that area, and I walk my grandson on his chair and go to the park there, and lots of space to walk. Same thing, absolutely. Looks like there's concerns here of a different nature, but I don't understand why several years go by and we're doing this now. So, no need to talk about it, but that's just how I feel, and I'll talk about it next week.
Thank you, Councillor Peary.
For me, if there is something wrong, regardless of how long something's been in place, it doesn't negate the fact that something is wrong. I think, again, for safety issues, it just makes sense that we have the same rules where something of this nature takes place, looking at the pictures, you can hardly see the fire hydrant. There's, in my view, something wrong with that. Looking at where the sidewalk ends, I recognize that we can plow only as far as the hedges will allow us to plow. It makes sense to me that, if we're going to be doing this, we need to be doing it across the board. So through you, Madam Chair, just like in the last case, I'm in favor of supporting staff's recommendation on this one.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Marr. Mr. Marr, it identifies in the report the fact that, it's recognized we have these issues, and that we need a policy to help manage encroachments. It's indicated in the report that staff intend to bring forward such a policy for council's consideration. Do you have some timelines and thoughts around that?
Through you, Madam Chair. We do. We are working with operations staff in the IS department as well as risk management. We would like to have a policy back for council consideration by the fall at the latest, mainly because a lot of these issues come up during the winter time when we're trying to clean the sidewalks and the roadways. And so we'd like to have a policy in place to deal with it then. A lot of the issues come forward with residents complaining about damage to their hedges, which are located on town property. And so it causes an issue for operations staff as well as for our insurance staff. So we do intend to bring something back by the fall.
Thank you. And I'm very respectful of the comments with regards to, we certainly don't want to appear to be singling anybody out. We need to address this from a town-wide perspective. I think Councillor Tom mentioned earlier about the fact of needing a policy to help deal with these situations, because there are numerous similar situations, and while some may be needed to look at on a case-by-case basis to determine the merit behind it, I think it is important that as we identify these issues that we do develop the policies to help guide council's decisions as well as give staff direction on how to deal with these situations. So I think if there is a silver lining out of all this is that we'll come forward with the policy to deal with this going forward, so that we can deal with it evenly throughout this town.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And much to the same comments that I had in the previous, this more so, this hedge, and of course I drove it as soon as I became aware of it in the winter, and I saw that the sidewalk was plowed. And I could see where staff would have an issue with the top of a tractor encroaching and brushing the cedar hedge. I never saw any sightlines or anything else, and I could only imagine that this hedge is 20, maybe 30 years old, but I don't think the house is that old, but it is at least 20 years old. And now we're saying you have to cut it back 2 feet. I mean, if we can find a parked car overnight, I don't know why it took us 20 years to say that this is not close, is too close to the sidewalk. And again, what really caught my attention was how many other cedar hedges are on, they're planted 2 feet from the sidewalk and as they grow. So, I am absolutely not in favor of coming onto this person and saying, now you have to basically remove those trees. To cut it 2 feet in from the sidewalk edge is taking it way back to the stem. You're cutting the tree in half. So you might as well remove it. I cannot go along with this, again, for the same reason. So, those are my comments.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Tom.
I guess the frustrating thing for me is that every single case that we will hear that has to do with something like this will have this backstory, the hedge has been there for 10, 15, I mean, if there's 3,000 people, I mean, this is taking an hour and 15 minutes, we're talking about cedar hedges. I know that's part of what town council does, but, I mean, so it's hard to, if you take each one, there's always going to be someone saying, well, I planted it 15 years ago, and they've been here, and the town's never noticed it, so
again, I feel the same way as I did on the last one. You're stuck in the middle. You're saying, well, we're getting recommendations from staff that this is, encroaching on the town's property, then we have to assert our property rights and everything else like that. So it's like a catch-22 scenario. We'll never get one of these, very few of them will come to council when we'll want to penalize the resident. But unfortunately, that's the case. They're encroaching. I kind of agree with Councilor Peary. They're encroaching for 10 years or 10 days. What's the difference? And I agree with what has been said before. We need a way to equitably assert the town's property rights and equitably assert the fact that people are encroaching on the town's property. So, I guess what my preference would have been on the last one, I didn't make this motion, and would be on this one, is to at least defer these until we have a process in which we can equitably determine what we're going to do with encroachment. So I'll just make that a comment at this point in time and see what other people have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Kim.
As difficult as it is, especially when you see even bigger trees being brought down, is that, we're going to enter that stage where we like it or not, that you're going to, I think in any kind of policy journey, there's going to be some heavy lifting. And it looks like this is going to be one of those issues where there's going to be some struggles, but I think the positive thing is that the encroachment going forward will come to a stop or a trickle. If we don't take these measured steps, then who's to say that this will not continue? And I'm not saying that we're making an example of anyone here, but we have to start somewhere to ensure that there is compliance. And so I think, for myself, I have no choice but to be consistent with how I voted from the previous issue, and the only other issue is that this has been here longer, but I'd still go with the staff recommendation here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas. Will we be driving around the town and looking to remove any cedar hedges that are planted within our right-of-ways?
Complete drive.
Through you, Madam Chair, operations staff know where the issues are, and so these two particular properties have been problematic in the last 2 seasons. There are other areas around. I think, and part of the discussion tonight is around the whole shift in policy. Speaking for IES, for our department, staff have tried to accommodate, tried to live with situations that are in the field without being disruptive to the community. We have a couple situations here that are a little more strenuous than others, but if the policy is to be a little more consistent, a little more protective of our right-of-ways, then that's something that we may look forward as part of the development of the bylaw and coming back with a recommendation that maybe implementing that type of approach where we have problems, start systematically looking at making adjustments, making corrections, and being more consistent across the board. So maybe just to summarize the responses, we are where we are based on practices that we've practiced for probably 40 or 50 years. Maybe it's time to look at those practices and make some adjustments to be a little more consistent going forward.
Thank you. Like Councillor Tom mentioned previously on the last one, I think that policy would be a great idea to get that policy in place and moving forward. I do agree. I think that anyone that puts anything on our right of way should get permission from the town. So I think that's important. I know you're laughing. I think it's a big issue when it comes to our right-of-ways, but I think in this case with them being there for such a long period of time, and especially the homeowner purchased this property while they were still, they were already there. They purchased this property with that, I guess, in essence, with that view there, and now for us to come in and tell them that, it's not compliant, then you have to get rid of them or scale them back. I think that's, I don't know, I have a problem doing that, so I'm also going to stay consistent, and I can't support what's in front of us right now.
Thank you, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've never been in this situation, but I've heard about it. If somebody has unpaid parking tickets and they go to renew their license, they don't know that they have these unpaid parking tickets because they're clear there for whatever reason, but it's on your transcript, and you have to pay for it before you get your license. Does the licensing authority say, oh, you didn't know about it, that's too bad, or I agree with you? Or do they say, well, you have to pay your parking tickets before we can renew your license? You know, I recognize that these have been in place for a long time, but that doesn't mean that they should be there, and we're identifying these as an issue. And through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Simonovskis, when we come through with a bylaw, are we going to allow these two specific examples, but specifically this one? When you develop a bylaw, is this going to be allowed under the bylaw, or is this the type of thing that's going to be excluded from the bylaw?
Mr. Simonovskis.
Through Madam Chair, Mr. Marr may have some comments on this as well. From our perspective, the intent would be that the bylaw would not allow any encroachment on the right-of-way for our purposes.
Thank you.
So, you know, if we were to defer this and wait for a bylaw, the trees would be around for a little bit longer, but, you know, ultimately, I don't think it would stop this situation from needing to be rectified. So, at this point, you know, I'm happy to vote in favor of it again.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys for the second time.
Sorry, and I won't belabor the point, but I'm still... the main reason is encroachment, and we're having problems with our material. I noticed that the owner really cut them back, that there is a perfectly comfortable walkway away from the hedge. I think these pictures were taken in September 2014 that shows the hydrant, it's way out there now, and that's not the only property that has hydrants. I've seen them that grow flowers around it. Anyways, another question, are we aware of any major safety issues that have occurred, any accidents reported? Just wondering. You, Madam Chair.
To Mr. Marr.
Through Madam Chair, there were no, as far as we know, no accidents, but of note, Central York Fire Services has an issue with the cedar hedge covering the fire hydrant in that particular manner as a safety issue. And there is a concern from operations staff that there was some, and from our contractors, that there may have been some damage to the contractors' vehicles when they were trying to clear the sidewalk due to coming so close to the hedges and scratching the vehicles.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate that. Now, I know that they've done a lot of clearing, so I don't know if they've tried their machinery again, if it's cleared the way, because it's certainly, the sidewalk is clear, and there's some area before the hedge, so that seems clear to me. And just from I guess just again from a safety perspective, I think that was raised here. I don't see any sightline issues again in that area, and I got a real problem with saying that take those things down. Who knows how many years it took this person to grow them and put them to, start over again. I'm not sure how unsightly that's going to be, but I don't agree with this.
Thank you. Councillor Abel for the second time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I was in a very highly dense area in Markham, there was a crescent, and the people on the outside, they had 4 homes pied in there. And the wintertime, they had no place to place their snow. So they would push it out onto the road. They had nowhere to go. And, of course, they were not compliant with the bylaw. So I said to someone running, if they paid the taxes, you cram those houses in, then it's up to us to remove that snow. So they brought in a front-end loader and moved it, and everyone was happy. We pay taxes in the town, and I would dare say that some of these properties pay a good price. And they have the right to expect a response to something that is of a concern to the town within a 20-year limit of time. We have a level of service. We should be letting these people know quickly to avoid situations like this. I think that's a fair expectation of our residents to have us come back after 20-odd years and say, okay, you know what, we're getting scratches on the equipment, is not the level that I see that we should do. It really is reflective on us as much as it is on them. And again, all right, it does encroach, but, you know, I don't see it encroaching to any big degree. Visually, I see it, but it's around a soft bend. They're beautiful trees. If we can work with them and gracefully take back some of the trees down below, I could see working with them. But I'm not in favor of what the recommendation has here. And I think basically I think our residents have the expectation that they could get a better level of service from the town.
Thank you. I believe it's time to call the vote. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you, I guess, Mr. Marr, we identified in the last issue that the bylaw that people keep referring to was passed in 2005, which predated the planting of those hedges. But in this case, the reciprocal is the case. It seems like these hedges predate the bylaw that's on the report in 2005. Do you know if it was substantially different prior to that? And I guess what I'm getting at is, what would have been in place when these hedges were planted? Because in your report, you certainly do identify there was questions around property lines, and I'm just wondering if there was any substantial difference in the bylaws at the time that these were planted.
Mr. Marr?
Through you, Madam Chair. The hedges do look as if they predate the bylaw in 2005. I'm sorry, I can't provide an answer with regards to what the bylaws looked like before, although I will say that anybody trying to encroach upon town property, generally, even without a bylaw, should be speaking to the town staff about whether or not such an encroachment, would be permitted. So even in the absence of a bylaw, even if the previous bylaw wasn't clear. The current owners of the property, as far as I can see, from the registry office, purchased the property in December of 2004. So even if they had decided to put the hedges up, it would have been the earliest of spring of 2005. Given the age and the maturity of some of the trees and hedges on that site, the likelihood is that it pre-exists their ownership of the property, and therefore, when they bought the property, I think a competent real estate lawyer would have let them know that there are certain encroachments that they're buying, or a certain piece of property they're buying. They're actually not buying other pieces of property. That is, they don't own the trees and the hedges technically. They are on town property. And so I think they bought knowing the situation. We have, in deference to this current state of the bylaws, tried to work with the homeowner. I think the homeowner can come and speak for himself next week about his response to that. It hasn't been positive in terms of working with the town staff. So with regards to the existence of previous bylaws and how long this hedge has been here, I'm not entirely sure what it would have said back then, but regardless, the previous homeowner should have come, or previous homeowners should have come forward and asked staff if if the town would be okay with the encroachment.
Just as a follow-up question, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Marr. Mr. Marr, you spoke just briefly about what efforts have there been to try and find some sort of compromise and solution between the town and the property owner?
Through you, Madam Chair. In the report, we noted that we had spoken or tried to speak with the owner of the property to trim back the hedges 2 feet, and we gave him until the middle of January to do so. The homeowner then told us not to touch his hedges, and that he wouldn't be doing so, and would potentially be commencing legal action against town if we touched his hedges. So, again, I don't want to speak too much about the homeowner. I imagine he is unfortunately unable to come to the meeting tonight. It has indicated that he will be delegating next week to speak about this matter. But as far as town staff are concerned, he hasn't been willing to kind of reach a compromise. We have approached him with that, but it hasn't taken place.
Thank you. Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Marr, you mentioned that previous owners should have possibly come forward and enter an agreement with the town. I'm just wondering, from the last item, I don't know if you can specifically answer this, but from the last item we heard, there was a he said, she said type of scenario when it came to what staff give the authority to make the plantings. I'm wondering, I would assume that this is probably the same case scenario. Would we even know if the previous owners had even approached the town? I mean, if we're talking 10 years, 15 years, maybe those owners did approach the town and did speak to someone in the town and did possibly, ask for permission and were given permission, and we just don't know about it. So, I do have those concerns, and I don't know if anyone can answer that. I don't know if you can answer it or someone else.
Anyone want to try and answer that? Mr. Marr?
With you, Madam Chair, as far as we could find out, nobody was ever spoken to about this particular piece of property. The hedges are just there, and certainly we don't have any record of the current homeowner approaching the town asking if everything was okay. His response was simply, don't touch my hedges. So I don't think we don't have any much more to go on beyond that.
Okay, thank you. I guess just for me, and because it's such a long time, we don't necessarily know if there was some type of agreement, maybe, if you go back 10, 15, even, I don't know how old these hedges are, but things were a little bit more lax back then when people used to come to the town, and, someone might have just came in and just said, hey, you know what, talked to someone and said, hey, can I plant these? Here's where I want to plant them. I got a landscaper coming, and someone in the town said, yeah, sure, go ahead. That's good. Saw the drawing, said, yeah, go right ahead. And they did it. So, without knowing that, there's no way to prove it one way or the other, so, it could be the opposite. I don't know. But like I said, I'm not in favor of what's in front of us.
Thank you. I think it's time to call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, that carries. Now we'll move on, Councillor Thompson, number 4. Mr. Mayor, could I just kindly ask you to take the chair for a minute?
Certainly.
I move the recommendation as it stands.
Councillor Thompson, second, please. Councillor Abel, thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know who pulled this.
I did.
Councillor Thompson, it would be yours, sir.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, I just wanted to clarify, in the report it seems to indicate that only site selection 2 and site selection 3 is being recommended, and I'm referring to attachment number 2, and that the site that's in the Engelhart-Vandorf area is not being recommended, but it's on the map. And so, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, can you please clarify what areas we're identifying as probable sites?
Mr. Ramuno, please.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is the same map that we attached to our public planning meeting last week. These were the 3 sites that staff identified as meeting the separation distance requirements, but we are recommending to council that only the business park areas along the 404 corridor, being 2 and 3, be included as areas where medical marijuana production facilities be permitted, subject to the criteria in the bylaw, and not recommending that one be included.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, and I'm certainly supportive of that. I don't think that it should be allocated in the area that's identified as number 1. I think that there is the potential down the road for other residential development, as we're seeing with some sort of applications, and that raises a future question for me. I think the other questions that I had really around, in terms of the recommendation for 150 meters distance separation, can you please clarify whether or not that's from property line to property line, or is it from building to building? How are we measuring the distance? Because when I look at other municipalities, they sort of define it differently, so I'd like to know for us. Through you to Mr. Ramuno.
Certainly, through Mr. Merrick. We've identified 2 criteria with respect to the separation distance. The first one being 150 meters to any zone. The second is the 150 meter separation distance to the sensitive land use, and that is to, and I'm just looking at the bylaw, which is on page 57. And again, that is, it is measured from the lot line
from the lot line to the lot line. So from the lot line of the proposed medical marijuana production facility, that lot line to again, a sense of land use.
So just to be clear, so you're measuring from lot line to lot line?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'll pass the chair back to you, Madam Chair, and I did have Councillor Peary next on the speaker's list.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson.
And just one final, I mean, I've certainly heard from some residents, they ask the question of why do we not just ban it outright? And through you to Mr. Marr, perhaps, or Mr. Ramuno, as far as I can understand in terms of the research I've done, most things say that we're not able to ban it, primarily because it's licensed or regulated by Health Canada, and in doing so, because they are licensing it, we open ourselves up to a court challenge, which a few municipalities, especially out in BC, are currently having done. So just for clarification, I think it's important that the residents understand if you can or cannot and why.
Mr. Marr.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's correct. There have been some questions about it out in BC. However, given the fact that it is a regulated license and permitted by the federal government use, this town staff don't believe it would be appropriate to do a restricted outright ban of it, and we would end up with a court challenge that we would likely lose. And so it makes more sense, and I think that is the approach that other municipalities in Ontario are taking, which is to regulate where these types of uses should be in the municipality. And I think in this case it's appropriate to classify it as a business park employment use.
Thank you. I guess would that be another case where the federal legislation trumps municipal? No need.
Councillor Peary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the chair of the EDAC committee, I will be remiss if I didn't state that at the meeting on Thursday night, there was a motion moved to recommend to council to deny this outright based on the fact that it wasn't in the committee's mind a positive economic development opportunity. We haven't passed those minutes yet, so there's no way for that to have appeared on the agenda tonight without going through the proper process. So I wanted to bring it up tonight. Based on the statements that Councillor Thompson has just mentioned, it wasn't something I was able to support on that evening. That viewpoint is not something I'm able to support tonight because, again, it's not something that is permissible under the fact that it is allowed through the federal government. So I wanted to bring that to council's attention, even though it's not something I personally agree with.
Thank you. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 53, there was staff had a response to the question regarding the existing licenses to produce. Do we have plans to conduct an inventory of existing producers and confirm and track their expiry dates to youth, to whoever would be able to answer that question?
Through you, Madam Chair, that, staff doesn't have that information. I mean, Health Canada is very, restricted with respect to what information they release related to the licenses that they have issued and what producers are out there. But the solicitor or billing director may have more to add to that.
So I guess through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Rullo, we would really never know if anyone's license really expired that's under the authorization of the federal government, so we wouldn't know whether someone's operating without a valid license then.
Mr. Marr.
Through you, Madam Chair, we're just saying here, no, we don't believe we would unless the federal government were to notify the municipality of it or the business owner were to come forward willingly. There would be no way at this current stage for the municipality to know whether or not their license has been revoked or pulled for some other infraction.
Okay. And lastly, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Romano, on page 54, with respect to requiring municipal licenses or additional inspections for medical marijuana production, staff believe that this would be redundant and without benefit. I was just looking through other municipalities who do have municipal licensing for medical marijuana facilities, including Mississauga, including with the licensing, it has to be done annually. There's a fee. Any licensed applicants are deemed to have granted a right of entry by the Peel Regional Police and other safety measures. You don't find that there's any value in having a municipal license bylaw in place here in Aurora?
Mr. Marr? Or Mr. Minow?
So, through you, Madam Chair, based on the information, our discussions with other municipalities and the Health Canada and their strict controls, they're the only ones who would have access to these facilities to do inspections with respect to the sale of the license. So we're recommending that, our building staff would only do building inspections if there is a construction of a new building. But other than that, we would leave it up to the Health Canada to carry out their inspections. Again, the information we have is municipal staff would not be given access to these facilities once they're up and running. It's strictly the responsibility of the federal inspectors.
Just one more question through you to Mr. Romano. So regarding fire inspections, are we at least allowed to conduct annual fire inspections to make sure that they're within code?
Mr. Minow, Mr. Marr?
Through you, Madam Chair, good question. It's something we can follow up with our fire department. I don't have an answer for you on that.
Okay.
Perhaps for next week, Mr. Minow? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abel, then Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, and Councillor Kim was touching on what I was going to ask is that we have grow-ops currently in the municipality, but you may not be able to answer that because you're not privy to those stats. Is that correct? Through you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. We do not have information of current producers that are licensed within the town. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, York Region Police also does not have that information.
I'm surprised at that. So if we would issue a bylaw where we're going to allow this and we put them in the industrial area, do we notify Health Canada and do they oversee the expiration of the current licenses and making sure that operations cease? Or is that all guarded? Or could you give me some sort of idea on that?
Madam Chair, if there's a new producer who has a new location, they're obviously required to approach the municipality and advise us that they will be, operating a facility, and they would already have, information from Health Canada with respect to whether they already have a license or they're going to be granted the license. So they would need to approach the municipality with respect to, their future operation. And again, if it is a new building, they would need to submit, the proper applications for construction of a new building, and we would be involved, and the building would be inspected, and we would be aware of the operation.
And that's great. I think we had a presentation where it was explained to us how, what's the word, sophisticated, medically supervised, and all of those regimens are taking place. But what I wanted to know is if there are operations now that are operating in the town, when we pass the bylaw saying, okay, we're only allowing it in this part of the town, is it just to new applicants? And what about the ones operating now? Would they have to comply at the expiration of their Because I understand the licenses are only 1 or 2 years old. And would they be told, okay, you can't do it anymore at this location in this municipality?
Ms. Van Loon or Mr. Runo?
Through you, Madam Chair, based on our information and our understanding is any existing producers, that have licenses will be allowed to continue to operate. We're not aware of the term of those licenses, but notwithstanding, if council were to approve a bylaw to, permit these facilities in certain areas of town, they would continue to be allowed to operate where they currently are under the conditions of their license with Health Canada.
So this is, through you, Madam Chair, this is basically for any new operation coming into our municipality.
Through Madam Chair, yes, that's the way we understand it.
And so it may be, but we'll never know, that there will be medical grow-ops for marijuana continuing in other areas. All right. And I would just like to, I'm not an advocate of marijuana, but I do want to say that for medical reasons, it's like any other pharmacist. Some of them are opiates and are narcotics-based and are very dangerous. They bring an element into any area. So I'm satisfied that that's not going to be a detrimental effect on what our community is about.
Thank you, Mayor Doll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly through you, either Mr. Meyer or to Mr. Romero, to Councillor Thompson's point about not having facilities on Industrial Parkway South or Englehart, would this bylaw specifically preclude that? Because if it's in there, I don't see it. And if I miss it, I would appreciate you pointing that out.
To you, Madam Chair, we have a draft bylaw attached to the report, and let me just find the section. It permits the facilities within the BP zones, and those are the two zones, and the only BP area is along the 404 corridor. The Englehart area doesn't have a BP zone, it has the old M zone. But we are also excluding the two BP zones along within the bylaw along Wellington Street and Mavernack, because they are BP zones, so the bylaw specifically excludes those BP zones.
Thank you very much. I was actually looking for a specific exclusion, so that explains it. I appreciate it.
What was the other, along Wellington, and what was the other area? Mavernack, thanks. Councillor Humphries is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm not sure if anyone can answer this, but if, this moves forward in the zoning pilot, and there's a complaint of a facility that you're not aware of, but someone has an issue with odor, and they report, is there anything we can do once this occurs in terms of the complaint?
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Madam Chair, for clarity, you're referring to a legally operating licensed producer in a BP zone. It's my understanding that there's very sophisticated HVAC equipment required to reduce odors, and that will be part of a building permit. Even in existing buildings, likely we'll see building permits as there'll be renovations and there'll be the installation of some very sophisticated HVAC equipment to eliminate and to mitigate those types of issues. And those regulations are outlined in the regulations by Health Canada.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel uncomfortable having no say as a municipality over marijuana growing facilities. Given our experience with Canada Post and other federal areas of jurisdiction, I think the best level of government that can protects its residents or is at the municipal level. I'm not sure Mississauga set a precedent, but, I think they're going the route that I believe in that, just like restaurants, there are, I understand that York Region inspects the restaurants, any industry where there is even a remote chance of any health issues with the residents, there is a regular checkup of those facilities. And I believe, it could be my ignorance. I'm sure this is a real high-tech, like biopharmaceutical operation, and I'm sure it's very clean and so on. But because it's still relatively new, I would still like to have municipal control over, the standards, make sure that they meet the requirements, that they can continue the operation so long as, they meet the requirements and being issued an annual license. So for those reasons, I would like to have staff look into having a licensing process at the municipal level. And I just don't feel comfortable with, just the facilities that large being in Aurora, and we don't have any control over inspection or safety, and we have to trust the federal government, who may never visit Aurora, unless, Honorable Lois Brown has a different set of experiences that we're not familiar with. I don't think she's going to be checking regularly, so I think it's important that we have some sort of control.
Councillor Kim, would you like to make that amendment?
Thank you. Sure, I would like to make that amendment to have staff investigate the possibility of having a licensing town be able to license these marijuana grow operations.
And that was, your information was based on the city of Mississauga, was it?
Yes. Yes, from my readings, it seems that the city of Mississauga have a licensing bylaw that was enacted just recently.
So that could be put in your motion based on the experience of Mississauga? Seconder. Councillor Humphreys. Would anyone like to speak to that amendment? Mr. Clerk, would you like to tell us what the amendment is, please?
Thank you, through Madam Chair, and I'll ask Councillor Kim to please confirm if I didn't catch this correctly, that staff be directed to investigate the possibility of the creation of a town licensing regime for medical marijuana aligned to that of the city of Mississauga.
Yes.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Would anybody like to speak to it? Okay, I'm just going to go around the table. Councillor Peary.
Through you, Madam Chair, to either Mr. Ramuno or Mr. Marr, do we license any other businesses in town?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we have a licensing bylaw. We license taxi drivers, taxi owners, mobile vendors, but not any manufacturing, industrial type uses.
It's my experience that a lot of municipalities will license all of the businesses in their town just so they know who's there. I don't know if we're able to do it just for a specific industry, especially if it falls outside of our jurisdiction. If we want to develop a business license as a whole, and everybody who does business in town needs to sign up with us so that we know who's around, there's better data that can be drawn from that. That's something I'm in favor of, figuring out how we charge for those licenses. I will leave that up to the experts, but just knowing who's in town across the municipality makes sense to me, but I'm not sure if it's, through you to Mr. Marr, are we able to license organizations that have been, it seems like a special kind of license to me, so are we able to license in this capacity? And if Mr. Marr can clarify?
Mr. Marr.
Through you, Madam Chair, generally in the municipal act, municipalities can't license manufacturing businesses, but I think I'd like to hold off on saying anything definitive until I kind of see what Mississauga has done in this regard. I think they're a bit of an outlier, but I think it'd be worthwhile for staff to go back and take a look at it.
Sounds like good advice. Are you okay with that?
So, I don't know if I can vote in favor of it now, but I think it's definitely something we should refer to staff for a report back on whether or not we're able to license facilities in that manner.
Anybody over here want to speak to the amendment? Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question would somewhat follow on the same lines. This is more abstract, but does the City of Toronto license Molson's for brewing or Mississauga, wherever that is? I mean, is that something that they license? Through you to Mr. Mara? I don't know if you know that answer or not.
Through Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I'm not aware, but the City of Toronto has a different municipal act than Aurora does, so.
And I'm just pointing out that there are scenarios in which, I mean, this is a pretty, unique circumstance with medical marijuana, but I mean, depending on the outcome of the election, federal election, it might not only be medical marijuana we're dealing with, but legal marijuana as well, depending on which party wins and if they follow through on their campaign promises. So, anyways, I guess I would rather just see whether or not we could even implement a bylaw as opposed to put it in. So, I don't know I suppose I'd rather have staff come back and let us know, but I guess I'll see what other people have to say about it as well.
Councillor Humphries? No. Councillor Abel, any comments on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
On the amendment, yes.
Just that we're to receive a report, and I'm in favor of that.
Thank you. Anybody on this side? Councillor Thompson?
I guess through you to Mr. Ramuno, I mean, it does speak a little bit to municipal licensing. In the report on page 3, it talks about the fact that staff do not feel that there'd be benefit in doing so, that, part of it is that these facilities have federal regulations, very stringent. So I guess my question through you to either Ms. Van Leeuwen or Mr. Ramuno, I mean, if we did license them and we did do inspections, would we then send in our bylaw officers asking them to inspect whether they're adhering to federal regulations? And is that something that they're even trained or capable of doing?
Thank you, Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Madam Chair, we would do likely annual inspections and renewal of a business license if we had a bylaw, and in that bylaw it would outline certain criteria specific to the business licensing aspects, likely that they'd have to produce their federal license. I understand that there is restrictions around access to where the cannabis is stored. We would not be able to gain access to any of those parts of the buildings because of the federal regulations. So we would, in the bylaw, we'll have to take a look at City of Mississauga's bylaw and see what in fact they're asking for in terms of documentation and inspection. But likely we wouldn't get into all parts of the buildings.
So in essence, really, we're just making sure that they're staying current with their licensing and that they're complying to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, call the vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Good. All those opposed? Carries. Thank you. Back to the main motion, as amended. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, last time this was before us, I made some comments with regards to the look of the facility and some of the concerns that have been expressed in other municipalities, especially around security and so forth, and I use Windsor as an example. And you did note it in the report about unsightly fencing and so forth, but you said that would normally be addressed through the site plan process. Is there no way to incorporate some of those expectations or what we're looking for in the bylaw itself? I think what I'm trying to avoid is a situation where somebody purchases a property, moves forward with this, then comes to us in a public planning and says, here's my site plan, and we say, well, we don't really like your fence. I mean, then we get in that situation. I'd rather manage that expectation so that if security is going to be paramount for the facility and they erect a large unsightly fence around the property, then there's a responsibility on them to somehow screen or do it so that it doesn't create issues for other businesses that are in that business park facility. Because I'm trying to keep in mind that they're not going to be the only tenant in that business park, and they all need to coexist, no different than in a neighborhood. And so, is there any way we can incorporate some of that expectation within the zoning bylaws so people are well aware if they're planning to come to Aurora, what is expected of the facility? Through you.
Mr. Moreno, sorry.
So Madam Chair, I did look into the issue of fences, and again, based on the information we were able to gather, it's not a requirement of Health Canada that fences be installed. They have strict requirements regarding security and ensuring that these facilities are monitored around the clock, and the ability to access. I mean, there's strict controls, doors are locked, and talking to some of my counterparts in other municipalities, fences typically aren't installed, so I don't really see that being a concern. With any new construction, we have that control. Council has a control through the site plan process to ensure that, if there is a fence to be installed, we have the control over the look and the size of the fence. But again, based on the information we have, the Health Canada has strict controls over, security monitoring, but they aren't requiring, large fences to be installed, and nor are fences being installed in some of the facilities that we're aware of.
And then just, if I may follow, just same thing with odor, and I know it was touched on earlier. I mean, there must be some regulations around odors with regards to landfill and being trying to manage that process. So I'm just thinking around the same thing with this facility. It states in the report that it's difficult to control, no well-defined regulations, but are there not regulations with other sort of areas like landfills whereby you can try and impose some of those same type of restrictions, or they must be able to read it somehow? Through you to Mr. Romano.
Mr. Luna.
To you, Madam Chair. Again, based on our research, and this is why staff is recommending sort of the 150-meter separation distance. They are required to install sort of the very high-tech and sophisticated air filtration systems. And we started off by using the current Ministry of the Environment guidelines with respect to separation distances for manufacturing facilities from sensitive land uses, and the minimum there is 70 meters. That's where we started off with at a staff level. Through discussions with other municipalities, we decided to increase that to 150, just to provide that level of margin. But again, coupled with, where we're recommending these facilities are located, the 150-meter separation distance to sensitive land uses, and 150-meter separation distance between, a second such facility and the air filtration systems. It's really sort of the best controls that we can come up with regarding the, controlling odors.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we didn't have the zoning bylaw, could Health Canada just continue and grant medical grow-up facilities within our town? I mean, would that practice still continue if it is in existence right now?
Mr. Luna.
Through you, Madam Chair, again, under the new regulations, a producer would have to come forward and, have a discussion with us with respect to, where to locate. And, we started this about a year ago because we did get someone who was interested in locating, and again, they typically start off by locating within the employment area, industrial area, because they see these type uses as a manufacturing processing facility. So as Mr. Marr mentioned, we would probably be challenged that someone would come into our employment area, pick a site within the employment area, and
try to convince us that it is a manufacturing processing operation, and we could be challenged at that point if we refused a permit or a site plan approval. And that's why, we recommended to initiate the study, the interim control bylaw, to identify areas to try and locate, include provisions in order to better defend ourselves if we're ever challenged.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Romano, but I'm still struggling with the fact that the federal government is allowing medical grow-op operations within municipalities, ours included. If there's a new regulation that says that will no longer be the course of action, that they will have to apply with new regulations and go into towns, that's one thing. But if this is just added as well as what they're already doing, my thought is whether we do, well, we should, because we could be challenged, and that's what I understand. Okay. But it also, we don't know that they'll still continue doing it the way they do it. And we know nothing about it. I mean, it could be, I understand in Markham, it's in residential homes. So, that could be going on right here in our town, we don't know it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to, Mr. Romano, so this is the medical marijuana plant, this is federally regulated?
To you, Madam Chair, yes.
Okay, thank you. So if we enact a bylaw and they have to come in and follow our rules and regulations and our bylaws, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, if council were to pass a bylaw, we're establishing that we're allowing those areas subject to these provisions. We would have, control over, based on having a bylaw in place. That's where we would direct these facilities to be located subject to those separation distance requirements.
Okay, thank you. And I guess as a follow-up, through Madam Chair, so if someone came in and said, we don't like the area that you've picked within your bylaw, and we want to put it somewhere else, would they be allowed to do that, considering they're federally regulated?
To you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Mark could jump in. I'm thinking if we had a bylaw in place, I mean, that's a level of protection for the municipality in that, we've responded to the new Health Canada regulations, so if someone did come forward and try to locate somewhere else, obviously, council's direction would be not to support that location, and we would defend, the current bylaw and the current locations that we've identified for these type of facilities.
Thank you. And I guess as a comment, I guess we do have a say when we enact the bylaw, so, I'm in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Through myself to Mr. Romano. Mr. Romano, it doesn't say anything in the bylaw about neighboring businesses, so it's 150 with respect to sensitive uses and similar type operations. But what about with respect to any other kind of business?
To you, Madam Chair, the sensitive land uses that are as identified by the MOE guidelines, and we've identified those in our bylaw on page 57 at the bottom. So a sensitive land use, are things such as, residential, long-term care facilities, parks, schools, places of worship, hospitals. But again, a similar type of, an employment operation, manufacturing, other type of businesses that are permitted within that BP zone would not be considered a sensitive land use. So again, they could be located next door to a medical marijuana protection facility because they're not considered a sensitive land use.
Okay, and I'm against this because I think it's a very poor land use. We don't have a lot of employment land, and this would take up a lot of land with very few jobs. Could we make this bylaw even more onerous to discourage? I mean, we have to, we can't say they can't locate, but could we make it more onerous to discourage location?
To you, Madam Chair, based on, our study, if we're going to, identify any area within sort of our employment area, providing protection to sensitive land uses, and that's why we've identified sort of our Greenfield Business Park area along the 404. We think there's a sufficient separation distance from sensitive land uses, and so that's, staff's recommendation. Making it more restrictive, I'm not sure, how we could do that, aside from perhaps increasing even if we increase the separation distance, you're still providing a location in town for them. Apart from that, I don't really see, apart from not permitting them anywhere.
But we could put in a separation distance for just any other regular employment use on neighboring land.
To you, Madam Chair, I mean, if we were to do that, I think you're essentially not permitting them. They wouldn't be allowed.
Okay. Okay, calling the vote. All those in favor? As amended, thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, Councillor Thompson, that is also yours.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Humphreys? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Given some of the other issues that are going on in the town, I just wanted to pose and have a conversation through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, you've identified a number of things within the Act and spoke to a bit with regards to the Planning Act and with the Development Act. And I've had a chance to look at the legislation and some of the other information that's floating around, specifically the MPP for Etobicoke Lakeshore, Peter Milson. He put out a presentation that he gave to his constituents about the legislation, and in that he was talking a little bit more about the theme of restoring more decision-making to local municipalities and some of the changes with regards to the OMB, making it limiting the influence of the OMB, restoring more decision to municipals, but I didn't necessarily see that in your notes. And so I was just wondering if you can comment on what you've read with regards to Bill 73 and some of the things that may or may not impact the OMP and improve the municipality's ability to make decisions and have them non-appealable, or at least have greater weight to our decision-making.
Mr. Ramuno?
To you, Madam Chair. We've tried to capture the key points or the key sort of changes that are proposed by Bill 73 as they relate to the Planning Act and the Development Charges Act, but I'll stick to the Planning Act changes on page 2. So there's a number of bullet points there. And again, I mean, there wasn't really anything that I could recall that dealt with specifically with the powers of the OMB. But again, a couple of key points were, the bill would prohibit global appeals to new official plans. So that means, when a municipality adopts a new official plan, someone would not be able to appeal the plan in its entirety for whatever reason. They would have to scope it down to a specific, policy or issue within the official plan. A couple of the other things were regarding, notices that would be required to explain the effect of the municipality's decision on a planning application. We would be required to explain the effect of, written and oral submissions that were received during the consultation process and the overall planning process. One of the other key changes or proposals is the prohibitions on appeals of new official plan with respect to those population and employment forecasts that we're going through now and the region is going through now. And the other one was the timeframes whereby an application can be appealed. The proposals extend those by up to 90 days. And again, the other one that really, the intent is to place more control within the municipal councils authority is restricting appeals of new official plans and zoning bylaws for a period of 2 years once they're in effect. So, I mean, those are really some of the key changes that we've highlighted under, as proposed by Bill 73.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Bruno. Mr. Bruno, I mean, we've all talked in the past about some of the challenges and so forth with regards to the planning process, but, since the province is asking for comments, why aren't we taking this opportunity to express some of our concerns or some of the things that maybe isn't in the legislation that we would like to see it? Again, going back to the whole idea of restoring more of the decision-making to the municipalities about local planning matters, and addressing some of those concerns that seems to come up time and time again. I mean, it seems like a perfect opportunity. They're asking for comments, and so why not address some of those issues that are outstanding and ask them to take this opportunity to amend and bring those forward.
To you, Madam Chair. I mean, that's obviously, an opportunity for us as well. The province isn't providing municipalities much time. I mean, legislation was passed, and we learned about it, not too long ago. I guess it was a couple months ago, and they're requesting comments by the end of May. I've had discussions again with my counterparts in some of the other municipalities in York Region. York Region planning staff, they're also putting together a report and comments to the province. We've identified, we're really just strictly providing comments on the legislation that's been submitted. There's always opportunities to make comments. Whether the province is actually going to pay any attention to some of those comments is another issue.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. I'll listen to the other comments around the table, but I think the intent of mine is I'd like to pass an amendment after others have had a chance to speak, to really just ask or add that comment to really that, we'd like to see the restoration of more decision-making to municipalities on local planning matters, as well as limiting the influence of the Ontario Municipal Board within the Act.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Thompson. I agree with those comments. It's a great opportunity for us to input. I think in the report, it shows a lot of our support on some of the changes and comments that the Act will be providing. One other, and we do highlight some of the concerns, or not totally in support of them. One of them I'd like to highlight as well, in addition to Councillor Thompson's motion, is to really look at the reduction of parkland dedication to municipalities. We have a fantastic master parks plan. I want to make sure that this is not impacted at all, or what that means to our municipality, if we take a look at that in terms of what we plan and what this may do. So if we can understand that and really highlight, if it is a negative impact, what it means to Aurora and what we would like to see, or remain consistent in terms of what we would like. So that's my feedback, if we can include that.
Would you like to see that as an amendment as well at some point?
It's in.
It's going to need.
Yeah, it's in there. It's highlighted that the reduction of parkland dedication to municipalities we have a concern with. But I'd like to understand, do we know what that means to us specifically, and do we want to highlight what that means to us? So we understand the impact of this change. I don't really understand the impact. That's possible.
Would we want more information for next week, perhaps, on that? Perhaps more information for next week, Mr. Minow. Any other comments? Would you like to make your amendment?
Happy to put forward an amendment that, in addition to the comments identified in the report, that we also add that we'd like to see to restoring more decision-making to municipalities and local planning matters, and to limiting the influence of the Ontario Municipal Board. Essentially granting municipalities more powers to manage demands caused by growth and intensification.
Thank you. Second. Everybody on this side wants a second. I saw Councillor Abel's hand first, so any discussion on this amendment? Okay. Okay, so calling the vote on the amendment. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Back to the main motion as amended. Are there, Councillor Abel?
Oh, I thought you were calling the vote.
Oh, I could call the vote. Are there any comments? Okay, call the vote. Oh, Councillor Thompson has one comment.
I think just for clarification, through you, Mr. Ramon. Mr. Ramon, did you need any direction with regards to the community improvement benefit charge of the $3,000 that you wish to include, or are you already going to include that in your comments?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, staff is proposing to include that comment as part of this final resolution that council would adopt and our submission to the province.
Okay, so if we adopt that, that is going forward. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Kim.
Within Bill 73, it states that all upper and lower tier municipalities need to have mandatory planning and advisory committees. And so what exactly is a upper and lower tier? And through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, do you think it's necessary for the town of Aurora to have a separate planning and advisory committee, in your opinion?
Mr. Mann?
To you, Madam Chair, no, it's not going to impact the town of Aurora, because we're not a single-tier municipality. It will impact York Region. So if this recommendation goes through, York Region being the upper-tier municipality may be required to establish a planning advisory committee. It would really only impact upper and single-tier municipalities. We're not a single-tier municipality. I mean, we're part of regional government, so it doesn't impact that. It won't impact the local municipalities within York Region.
Councillor Kim. Okay. Calling the vote then. All those in favor?
As amended.
As amended. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Moving on to number 6. Councillor Kim, you called that on the Oak Ridge Marine.
I can read my scribble.
Would you like to move the staff recommendation?
Yes, please. I'd like to move the staff recommendation, please.
Thank you. Seconder for that, Councillor Pierre, thank you. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Ramuno. Most of the staff comments seems to be based on more flexibility or language being too restrictive with respect to the development process. I don't see too many recommendations on the environmental protection arena, and I'm just wondering, I was reading some information from the Oak Ridges Marine Foundation and some other environmental organizations, and they had some excellent recommendations, such as develop policy on large-scale fill, amend the ORM CP to require rather than encourage completion of a comprehensive rehabilitation plans. I can understand why most of the planning team's recommendations are from a development process perspective, but would you have any recommendations or comments with respect to more of the environmental parts of the Oak Ridges Marine Act?
Mr. Bruno.
Through you, Madam Chair. Again, we feel that, the conservation plan and the Oak Ridges Marine Plan and Greenbelt Plan, I mean, they've got very strong environmental protection policies, and so does, so do Aurora's official plan 48, which was our conformity exercise when the Oak Ridges Marine Plan came out, and our zoning bylaw. But we did get a comment from we did receive some comments from the public that we've identified on page 5, where there was a request to deal with to provide comments to the province with respect to site alteration and fill permits. So those are something that, again, subject to, council's direction, will also include those as comments, as part of our comments to the province.
Through Madam Chair, to Mr. Ramuno again. There's a lot of, within the Oak Ridges Moraine categorization, within the lands, there's 4 types of land use categorizations, countryside being one of them, and a lot of the golf courses, especially in light of Highland Gate and other similar issues in the region. A lot of the golf courses, or perhaps all the golf courses, are categorized under countryside, and then there's a request to move it to a different categorization in order to build residential homes. Is there any way that, through this act, that you can see that we could put in some safeguards in there so that that's not a backward way or loophole for corporations to create a golf course so that in 20, 30, or even 10 years down the road that they can change that and become a residential development?
To you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, you're correct. There's, all of the lands within town of Aurora that are within the Greenbelt are captured under the Oak Ridges Marine Plan. And there are 4 land designations within the Oak Ridges Marine Plan: settlement area, countryside, linkage area, and core area. Just to clarify, and we've heard this before, that the majority of town of Aurora is within the settlement area under the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan, which permits urban development. The other 3 categories, countryside, natural linkage, and core area, that area is really, of the municipality that's covered by those 3 designations, is really within our southeast quadrant of town. And within those areas, subject to any site-specific permission that already existed, urban uses aren't permitted. So, when we talk about golf courses, those courses that are within our settlement area, the conservation plan does permit urban development, subject to local official planning policies within the settlement area. But again, the majority of the plan that covers the town with respect to the 3 restrictive designations, countryside, linkage, and core area, do not permit much in the way of urban development aside from what was legally existing on those lands the day of the enactment of the Oak Ridges Marine Plan back in 2001, and Aurora followed up with a conformity exercise to bring our official plan and zoning bylaw into conformance with the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan when it was first brought into effect.
Nobody else wants to speak on this? Sorry, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I don't know if I put my hand up earlier. So I guess I have a more general question. What we're endorsing as part of this motion is the staff comments, is that not correct, through you to Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, as we've identified in the report, subject to any comments that we may hear this evening or any direction moving forward.
Right. Thank you. I guess I'll ask, the first staff recommendation or staff comment is that consideration be given to providing greater flexibility with respect to land severance policies for large parcels of land in the countryside designation. And the comment goes on to say that as long as it doesn't impact, no adverse impact on any natural heritage or hydrological features, and also allowing municipal buildings, those, and correct me if I'm wrong, those protections are in place to help protect the hydrological features and the natural heritage. So the initial regulations enacted by the province were enacted for those exact purposes. So if they were enacted originally, is it the opinion of the town or town staff that those regulations were they were doing too much to protect the hydrological features and natural heritage, or, I mean, should we be reining in that protection? I mean, I don't, the greater flexibility is great, but if to trade the flexibility with protecting the environment, I would probably stick with the regulations we have in place every single time. So unless there's a definitive kind of answer to why we are doing it, I'd like just maybe a comment on that. Through you, Mr. Muno, please.
Thank you.
To you, Madam Chair. Staff's point or comment with respect to greater flexibility with respect to land severances specifically applies to the countryside designation. So the Oak Ridge Marine Plan now within those areas do not permit land severances, period. And so this is just staff suggestion for the province, if council chooses to accept that recommendation, to have a discussion to allow, what we mean by greater flexibility is to perhaps look at opportunities where perhaps, the severance, subject to meeting those environmental requirements, may still be considered by the local municipality. And again, just an example, before the Oak Ridge Marine Plan came into being, in some of these areas that were zoned sort of rural and that are now zoned rural, Oak Ridge Marine, we had pretty restrictive land severance policies. Severance would only be considered if there was a parcel, if the parcel had a land area of 10 acres, which is approximately 25 acres. And so that is staff's point, is that perhaps the province should consider loosening that policy up within the countryside area. There may be areas where additional land severances for, residential uses may be considered, may be appropriate. And again, this is just a staff suggestion.
Thank you. I guess my preference would be, these policies were set up because with the growth that's happening in Ontario, we have to protect the natural features of our province, and, I applaud the fact that the province has come forward with this, and in fact, I applaud the fact that they've moved forward with even more policies with respect to the green belt and kind of tying it all in together. My preference would probably be that they should expand the area, not contract it, and probably at the very least maintain the policies that they're talking about. So I would have trouble endorsing staff recommendations that would be the contrary of that. Because again, I think the reason that there's onerous regulations is because they want to make it difficult or impossible for people to develop or sever their land or what have you. The same would be said for the third bullet point on page 3, which is that consideration should be given to providing greater flexibility in view of small-scale developments, for example, eliminating the need for onerous approval requirements such as zoning amendments and minor variances. I mean, I imagine the onerous approval requirements are there to make sure that people don't, that nothing gets slips through the cracks. That you have to do, the fact that these are ecologically sensitive means you have to have more onerous approval requirements. To me, that makes perfect sense. So again, I wouldn't be supportive of that.
Councillor Tom, could you just give me the reference, please?
Page 3, it's 69, page 69, page 3 of the report, the first and the second, or the first and the third bullet point.
Thank you.
And I mean, I could go on, I suppose all I'm saying is, I mean, if I flip the page to page 4 of the report, page 70, you go to the fourth bullet point at the very end, it says basically that although Aurora settlement area does not need to be expanded, it says that should a municipality be in a unique position of requiring expansion to the countryside area based on growth plan conformity, exceptions should be considered. I don't agree with that either. I think, again, the province of Ontario is huge. And when you look at the size of the Greenbelt and the Oak Ridge Moraine, it actually doesn't cover that big a part of the province of Ontario. The province itself is massive. There's a lot of geography out there. There's lots of places for people to go. These are ecologically sensitive areas. They're necessary for the health of our province, the health of the environment. And I think that the recommendations I would endorse would be to either maintain the status quo or to increase protection. So as it stands now, I won't be supporting the endorsement.
Mayor Dodd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to those two specific issues that were raised by Councillor Tom, as an example of the first one, the land which is immediately south of the town lands, Leslie and Wellington area, where the bulk barn is located. So just to the south of there is countryside. There's a couple of farms in there and other properties. One of the discussions I know I've had with Mr. Downey and I think with Mr. Ramuno is if we, the town, had the opportunity to look at those lands and maybe put in some soccer fields with change room facilities, as an example. It would allow us to do it much more cost-effectively, and we can be pretty sure that whatever we do would be very much in keeping and at the highest level of construction. We could not do it because of the countryside regulations. So if these regulations were eased, a specific example in this one, would allow us to go in there and perhaps provide facilities at a far more cost-effective rate than we can do it now. So to your point, your concern, you certainly don't want to open it up holus-bolus, but at the same time, I think there needs to be more flexibility in the whole concept of what you can and cannot do. And it's very, very cut and dried. And it's, I know Mr. Downey would salivate at the idea of being able to do that, because we could go in at, 40% of the land cost that we do now. And certainly our biggest cost is land. To the third point, greater flexibility in the review of small-scale developments. Well, a small-scale development is an example. It could be a pool shed that someone wants to put on their lot. And right now, if they can do it, they would have to jump through hoops to get that done. So it's not, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ramuno, but some of those, just, I would like to do that. As an example, one of the complaints from a resident near Highland Gate, and I certainly don't want to get into that discussion tonight, but he says, okay, so they can come in and put a development in for a residential development. I can't put a pool shed up. It seems to me to be a little incongruous. So things like this would allow those owners to do that type of development. So it's certainly not there to go crazy, but it's to recognize that there are people, responsible people out there who could perhaps do some other types of developments. There would certainly be a lot of criteria around that, but at least give that opportunity. So I will be supporting the recommendations that come out. These recommendations are also very similar, by the way, to recommendations that Regional Council will be looking at this Thursday.
Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I went through this report, and I know that we had a public consultation on May the 4th, and there wasn't a lot of feedback. And I think it looked like there was only 13 people that came in, but there was probably about 13 that signed up, there was about 40, and there were some, concerns brought up. And I'm just wondering, and I know we have a very tight deadline, May 28th, Mayor Dow just kind of cited some differences or some examples, and maybe is there an opportunity to understand what, it's hard to put this in a way, what the major changes are, and just like that against the greater flexibility, and sort of an example. I know it's a lot of work, but I'm not 100% comfortable either in supporting this as is. It's very positive, and it looks like it's going to make things easier. We'll be able to, do some development a lot more, with ease and flexibility. I just want to make sure that, and I'm sure it is, and it's in here, that there is the utmost protection in our beautiful environment. So for me, I'd just love to have a little more, maybe I need to do more research and I have to take more time. I did not have enough time to really dig into the previous legislation and the changes that we're supporting and making. So if everyone feels this is enough, that's fine, but I'm just wondering if we should have almost a special bit of a presentation in terms of what the changes really mean, what they were, what they're going to be, and if there really is anything to really be concerned with. Because I don't see many concerns in this report, but I don't know if I'm just not grasping it correctly. So that's just a comment from me. Thanks. Right now, anyway.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. We've been called on from the province to submit our recommendations and suggestions, and this is the report going to that, and through you, I mean, just because we put this from our municipality, from our perspective, this isn't going to be adopted. I would believe that all municipalities have been asked, as well as the region, to forward their comments, as well as a number of public engagements, and then the province will weigh and review all these and then say, okay, this is what we said we would do in 2015. We would review and amend accordingly, and also the Planning Places to Grow Act. And so it's just the way the province gathers information. It's by no means going to be adopted by the province, and what we're putting here is going to actually take place. Am I correct in that, through you, Madam Chair?
Mr. Lino?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, Councillor Roll, you're correct. And again, the province is set up, as part of this coordinated review. They have a provincial review panel made up of a number of people, some of them working for local municipalities, and they've been holding public consultations, and they did come to Aurora, and they had a public consultation back in April. The regions also conducted public consultation. The province, they're not saying, they haven't identified what changes they're proposing. They're really just initiating their review, and they want to hear from the municipalities with respect to, how, now that we've been working with the 4 provincial plans, how are they working, any suggestions. So, staff have identified, a couple changes which we think, are relatively minor, and they're not going to impact, and it's not our intention to obviously impact the environmental integrity of some of the policies of, our plans or the Greenbelt or Oak Ridges Marine Plan. But again, they've asked for comments by the end of early June. I've talked to one of the members of the panels. They're still not sure, when they're going to come back. I think they're looking at perhaps coming back in the fall with a draft report. Again, I haven't heard about whether they've extended the commenting period, but it's something that even if we weren't to have our comments in by that date, obviously we would still submit those at some point. And the region, as the mayor mentioned, the regional council is looking at a report from their staff this week as well.
Thank you, and so I appreciate that our staff have taken the time to put this forward. One of the big pressures we have is our facilities, and the mayor pointed out a very good example. We have those Leslie Street lands there. I think it would be prudent of us to express that if there was some sort of way of moving about, and it's saying that we would like to put a facility with a washroom so our kids could play soccer and maintain the groundwater integrity or the hydrological integrity of the moraine. And that's what the moraine speaks to specifically, is the water, because we're at the headwaters. I can go along with that. In fact, I would encourage that we make that known. If we can find a way around that, it would be very good for our community. And would not have an impact on the Oak Ridges Moraine, which is a very sensitive area, and I appreciate all that, and the Greenbelt, and going forward with that. But that's a huge tract of land, and we're sitting right in the middle. I mean, we are the thinnest part of the Oak Ridges Moraine, right here. I think it's only a couple of 100 meters wide when it crosses Yonge Street. So, and then it blows out like an hourglass, east and west. So I can go along with this, and I'll support it. There are comments to the province, and they're not going to be adopted.
Councillor Councillor Peary. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Peary, Councillor Tom. Thank you.
Just quickly, a question through you to Mr. Romero. Mr. Romero, you identified in the report that back in July, when this was first before us, we asked for public consultation, and that in May, we had that public session. What did we do in terms of trying to engage the residents or get feedback between July and May?
Yep.
Did we do anything to solicit feedback and comments about it? Or was just that public house the only real opportunity for residents to provide feedback?
Oh, sorry.
To you, Madam Chair. I think last year when council, when staff had an early report in front of council, and staff had conducted a review of the rain plan in anticipation of this upcoming review, staff directed us to carry out some public consultation and present our report to our Environmental Advisory Committee. We did do that. We brought our report and suggested and requested, input from our Environmental Advisory Committee, I think last month. We did send out notices, and we held our public meeting. What we also did as well is, it was well attended, about 40 people in attendance. We did receive some valuable comments. What we did do as well is we actually reached out to some of our residents within our community who have been longstanding, members of various committees who have provided comments on the various plans throughout the years, and we did reach out to them, soliciting their comments, and we did receive some comments, and they're reflected in our report. So, we have reached out to various residents who we thought would have some valuable comments, and we did hold our information meeting. On top of that, the region held three public consultation meetings, and again, the province is on the road holding their consultation, and they had one session here in town.
And, I was at the provincial consultation. It was standing room only. It was very well attended. I think, I only bring that up because, again, we've been talking about communication. We've been talking about connecting and engaging the residents and getting them more involved. And to me, it's a little bit of a miss that, over a long period of time, just to have the one meeting to solicit feedback, I would have liked to see us have some ongoing efforts to try and draw that in. And I think it speaks to our need to, again, look at that communication policy and the actions we're doing so that residents are involved in these issues, because we know that so many people who live in Aurora and businesses, this issue is very important to them and dear to them, and I'm sure that more than 40 people have comments.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure what's been pointed out. There are a couple, not errors, but just, some of the sentences don't necessarily read properly, maybe just another look over them. One of them reads on page 77, it's not normally something I get into, but, if this is going to the province, I think it should be looked over and given a little bit extra attention. But, one of them says, providing that there would no adverse impact on any natural heritage or hydrological features. Just another look through, just to make sure we've got all of our I's dotted and T's crossed. I've got some issues with this. Number one, we're being asked to look at this tonight as a general committee, and we'll be approving it on the 26th before the deadline of the 28th. I don't know how that gives us an opportunity as a council to have, a good voice. Next week when we come here, are we expected to come forward with exact amendments so that staff can insert those amendments into our report to the province? Ideally, I'd want to be looking at what comes back after our comments, because for me, I agree with Councillor Tom, but I also agree with the Mayor. I think given the Mayor's context and explanation of each of those points that Councillor Tom had brought up, gives a little bit more context, and I can understand where we're going, but as these are stated right here, right now, they're very broad in nature, and I think a little bit of extra context makes sense, and it would provide the province a better understanding of what we're looking to see changed. If there's a way that we can add extra information before the report comes back to us at council, just defining exactly what the changes are and what the comments are that we're requesting, I think that makes sense. But as a committee, I don't know how we can ask staff to do that in time to come back to us so that it can meet the May 28th deadline. So that's sort of my issue, my conundrum with this right now. I think there are probably some very good reasons why they're written, the way that the comments are written, the way that they're written, but we're not giving any examples or any further information. So for me, I'd like to be in favor of this. I'm happy to move forward on this tonight, but I'd like to see more information providing an outline of the comments that we're submitting, and through you to Mr. Garby or Mr. Clerk, I'm not sure how we can go about that.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Excuse me. Through you, Madam Chair. Certainly, there's no doubt that Mr. Ramirez heard your comments. However, it would certainly be appropriate at council, considering the wording of the staff recommendation, to propose certain amendments, because the recommendation is that council endorse the comments prepared by staff and send the report of resolution. It would be a simple matter of saying that council endorse the comments prepared by staff with the following exceptions or the following additions, and then the second resolution have the report and the full resolution be sent, which would provide the clarity. So there is that opportunity to do so at council, if not tonight.
I'm not an environmental scientist. I wish we could have gotten this back early so we could have provided some more context and be able to comment on this appropriately. Because for me, phrasing exactly what I think needs to be added is going to be very difficult. If I could make a general amendment that examples be added to clearly define our comments, if I can make that now, I will. But I think on the whole, I don't know how else to move forward.
Councilor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to Councilor Perry's point, that's what I was trying to get at earlier. How are we going to get enough information to understand, our position of endorsing staff's comments, but really understanding the magnitude of what's being looked at as positive? Because when I look at staff's comments, and then I look at the public comments, some of them are exact opposites. And it could just be, again, interpretation of impact or the way it sounds when we're saying to make things a little more easier or flexible. So again, right now, I don't even know, I wouldn't know how to vote on this. I wish we would have more time, but is there an opportunity to somehow, and I know it's a lot of work, but before next meeting that we have a session or an information package that allows us, because I don't even know what clarifications I really want out of here. Just what's the magnitude of what was and what's changing? And then this is a question, frequently asked questions, and then we can be, okay, we get it, we feel more comfortable.
You want to go? I'm going to, one sec, Mr. Reno. Mr. Garby would like to weigh in on this.
Through you, Madam Chair, the difficulty in preparing a report like this is that trying to develop a consensus when there's nothing to react to. So we're asking provinces are acting proactively. What do we want to see in this next iteration of the plan? As a suggestion, council could simply forward the public comments to the province and then wait and respond to whatever legislation comes forward in a more reactive way as a way of facilitating discussions. There's certainly not direct consensus around the table, so it would be difficult for staff to consolidate into a single town position. So one suggestion is that we simply, here's the result of our public consultation, send it to the province, and then await any provincial direction on proposed changes, if any, which I doubt that there will be, but and then formulate a response based on any proposed changes.
Mr. Murno, do you have anything to add to that?
To you, Madam Chair, certainly I appreciate Council's concerns over a couple of the two bullet points that were mentioned with respect to staff's comments regarding flexibility on land severances. There and the other bullet point about small additions. We can certainly provide additional information before Monday to just explain our intent there. And again, they're simply staff's suggestions at this point. So I don't have a problem providing additional information, explaining the intent of those changes. And, council may still not wish to include those in any future comments to the province.
Thank you. On my part. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that would be a great idea, a great, enough information for us to be able to understand what the comments meant specifically, and then we can make our own decision. And I love the point that Mr. Webber mentioned, just providing all public input, this is what the public had to say. However, here's some other additional information from a town perspective, staff from their experience. So I appreciate that.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just so, I just thought I'd share that on April 13th, the province had the Ministry of Municipal Housing and Affairs at the Cultural Centre, and it was very well attended. I think a couple of us were there. So the province goes around and pulls in input and comments from the region, from the municipalities, from the public at large. This is a big gathering, a task of information. I'm hoping, some of these ideas are going to be adopted at the provincial level, but again, it's just sort of a gathering of information, and to go into great detail, I think at this time, is good for our understanding, but it really is just we're providing our input here from Aurora as it relates to us, and we're a little different than, say, Georgina, and a little different than Peterborough, and a little different than Halton. All this goes into to the province for them to digest and then come out with an overall revision of the plans, as I had mentioned before. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't understand it, but I'm hoping we're not going to come in for a workshop or something idea. Perhaps just a conversation with our staff might clarify some of the areas that you might have more interest in exploring.
To me, this is a staff report, and it's a planning staff report, and planning staff as this is a planning staff report, planning staff is concerned with development in the municipality. I believe that the province wants to know from the municipality how it feels about how the Oak Ridges Moraine Action Plan is doing and whether or not we want to make changes. And I don't think that as a municipal council we can do that without hearing from the public. The public meeting that was held on a Monday, the same night as the budget. We couldn't go up there and interact with our public. And as Councillor Thompson said, this is a very important issue to the voters in Aurora. We need to hear from them. We need to make sure that the comments that we are putting in as a council really represent how our residents feel. I was around in 2003. I was on that side of the table, and then 2004, through the process of our OPA 48 being approved by the province, there was a huge public consultation, there was a huge public interest. And I think it is our responsibility as representing the voters, that we find out what they think. And I think the only way that we can do that is by having a public meeting in the council chamber. And I doubt whether the deadline is written in stone. I'm sure if we wanted to continue the process, we could. With respect to something that was said at this side of the table, I believe it was Councillor Tom, don't we want to maintain the protection or increase the protection for this very valuable piece of land? I don't know what the stat is, but I think 2/3 of the town of Aurora sits on the moraine. With respect to the mayor's comments, that council in 2003 made OPA 48 more onerous than the province required us to. I'm pretty sure that that land south of the 404 could be used as playing fields. I think that was the intention of the province. I think it was the intention of this council at that time that we not even do that, that we protect it more. And with respect to development, I'm not worried about somebody putting a shed on their land. I'm worried about opening up the possibility of somebody putting residential development on land that really shouldn't be developed residentially. I want us to be responsible. I want us to be prudent. I don't want to do anything that would put us on a slippery slope in the town of Aurora. And I think that things do need to be clarified from a staff point of view for the next meeting, but I think that we also need to be deferring the comments of the politicians in the town of Aurora until those politicians get a chance to hear from their public directly. Microphone is on. All those in favor of the staff report? All those opposed? That goes forward to council. Thank you. Well, it's 10 o'clock. Through you, Mr. CAO. Apparently there's nothing time-sensitive on this agenda that's still left on this agenda. Is there anyone on council that wants to discuss anything on this agenda before going into closed session? So then would somebody make the motion to defer the rest of the items on this report to the next GC? I beg your pardon?
We could always pull them at council if we want, so.
Fine to council, which will not allow us to discuss them at a GC. All those second for that motion? Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? All those opposed? It carries. Would someone like to make the motion to move into closed session? Is that correct?
We have new business first.
Oh, we have new business. Does anyone have new business? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Thompson.
Well, we'll call it general information. I just wanted to thank everybody that participated in Team Aurora for the run for South Lake. Everybody did a wonderful job in helping to raise funds for the hospital. As a team, we raised just a little over $7,000, and which placed us 5th overall in terms of teams and 1st for the municipal challenge. And so I want to thank all members of council, staff, and everybody that helped Team Aurora. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. That was important. Would someone like to make a motion to go into closed session? Councillor Peary. Following an adjournment. Councillor Peary, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Peary, all those in favor? That carries. Stephen, I'm going to grab your paper clip.
Just about.